Chapter 23. Phantom Shadow. Chu Fengmian activated the Phantom Shadow body technique again. Suddenly, 3 shadows appeared at the same time. It was almost impossible to tell which one was the real one. Shadow body technique. Only an Earth-grade body technique can do this. This kid is cultivating an Earth-grade body technique. Catch him. Catch him and I'll reward you. Seeing Chu Fengmian's shadow body, the young hall master's eyes were filled with greed. An Earth-grade body technique had never appeared even in Wuxing Academy. If he could get it, he would be ranked at the top of Wuxing Academy. How troublesome. Chu Fengmian sighed in his heart. When the 3 phantoms split up, the 9 middle-aged men formed a group of 3. Without any hesitation, they chased after all 3 phantoms. With such coordination, there was almost no way to escape from it. Chu Fengmian was now surrounded. It was almost impossible for him to escape. Brat, hand over your movement technique and sword technique, and I can spare your life. This is your last chance. The young hall master sneered at Chu Fengmian. No matter how good your sword technique is, you can't escape today. Hand it over? Chu Fengmian's eyes were cold. This was not a matter that could be settled by handing over the sword technique and body technique. No one wanted others to get their hands on such sword technique and body technique. Moreover, even if Chu Fengmian did not die, he would at least be imprisoned as a slave. Since he could not escape, he could only fight to the death. Kill! Chu Fengmian spat out a word coldly. He pulled out his sword. The black azure sword appeared in Chu Fengmian's hand. Chu Fengmian's spiritual power also expanded and burst out, circulating in his body. Oh? A black-grade light sword? The young hall master's eyes showed a trace of ruthlessness. Kill this kid. Kill him and bring his corpse to Father. Father can also extract his soul and refine it. Yes. The 9 middle-aged men echoed at the same time and rushed toward Chu Fengmian. Every move was a killing move. These 9 middle-aged men had most likely killed who knew how many martial artists. Each and every move they made was a killing move that took one's life. Chu Fengmian relied on the phantom body technique to dodge again and again. How vicious! Chu Fengmian looked at the young hall master with killing intent in his eyes. Extracting and refining one's soul was one of the most vicious methods on the continent. After killing someone, they would extract their soul and read their memories. Once a person's soul was extracted and refined, not only would they have to endure great pain, but they would also not be able to reincarnate and would truly die. This kind of method was almost taboo. This young hall master was so young, but his heart was already so vicious. Limitless sword dance. The sword in Chu Fengmian's hand moved. As Chu Fengmian moved, the sword in his hand danced continuously. It looked extremely beautiful in the forest. What kind of swordsmanship is this? Is it a performance? Dugu sneered when he saw Chu Fengmian's figure. A little fellow at the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage dares to go against our martial flame hall? You're overestimating yourself. This entire phrase was created for you. As Dugu spoke, he took out a huge heavy sword. With a move of his feet, he rushed in front of Chu Fengmian and slashed down. Die! Only brute force. You don't understand sword intent. Seeing Dugu attack, Chu Fengmian sneered in his heart. In his opinion, this kind of swordsmanship was extremely clumsy. It's time to let you see a real swordsmanship. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The dark azure sword in his hand moved. This sword seemed to be extremely slow, but in fact, it almost reached the tip of the heavy sword in an instant. The tip of the sword was the weakest part of the sword. For example, the heavy sword used its strength to oppress the opponent. The tip of the sword was not considered strong to oppress the opponent. Chu Fengmian raised his hand, and the heavy sword was suddenly lifted up by Chu Fengmian. It flew out of Dugu's hand. What? Dugu only felt a huge force, and the heavy sword in his hand flew out of his hand. Before he could react, the tip of the sword was already in front of his throat. Die! Without the slightest pause, the sword light flashed, and Dugu's body fell straight to the ground. A martial artist at the 8th level of the bone-tempering stage died under Chu Fengmian's sword. What kind of swordsmanship is this? Dugu is actually dead. The remaining 8 people were stunned when they saw this scene, and they all stopped. Dugu was the strongest in their group, but now he was killed by Chu Fengmian in one move. Chu Fengmian was only at the 5th level of the bone-tempering stage. You bunch of trash, why did you stop? This is only a 5th level of the bone-tempering stage, brat, can't you deal with him? The young hall master shouted from the side. Who killed this brat? I'll give him a dark grade elixir to give him a chance to break through to the body-tempering stage. A dark grade elixir was not a small sum. Even as the young hall master, he felt his heart ache for a while. However, if he could really kill Chu Fengmian and obtain his swordsmanship and movement skill, then everything would be worth it. The young hall master could see that Chu Fengmian had killed Dugu by relying on his strange movement skill and exquisite swordsmanship. He did not dare to imagine how strong his swordsmanship and movement skill was to be able to kill an opponent who was 3 levels above him. However, it was definitely much more mysterious than the swordsmanship cultivation method in Wusheng Academy. A dark grade elixir, body tempering stage. This sentence immediately caused the middle-aged people who were still hesitating to stop hesitating. Once again, they rushed towards Chu Fengmian. These middle-aged people were in their 30s and were only at the 8th level of the bone-tempering stage. Their aptitude was not high, and it was almost impossible for them to break through to the bone-tempering stage. Unless they had the help of elixirs, but a dark grade elixir was so expensive that they would not be able to buy it even if they spent their entire lives. The young hall master's words made them see the hope of breaking through to the body-tempering stage, and each of them fought even harder. Sword after sword slashed towards Chu Fengmian. Every sword was a killing move, and they wanted to kill Chu Fengmian. All of you must die. Chu Fengmian roared inwardly. He originally did not have the intention to kill, but these people wanted to kill Chu Fengmian as soon as they arrived. This destroyed Chu Fengmian's remaining thoughts. Since they wanted to kill, then he would kill to his heart's content. When facing an enemy, there was only killing. He could not let them go. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed a touch of red light, and he rushed towards one of the middle-aged men. Seeing Chu Fengmian rushing towards him, the middle-aged man was overjoyed, as if he could already see the dark grade elixir beckoning to him. Chapter 24. Fast. The sword was extremely fast. In that instant, Chu Fengmian's speed was twice as fast as before. His body's strength seemed to have increased by a lot. His spiritual energy swelled in Chu Fengmian's body as if it was about to explode. Breakthrough. Chu Fengmian had gone through countless battles in the barbaric mountain range and accumulated his strength. Now, under the siege, Chu Fengmian actually broke through. His body, limbs, organs, and almost every part of his body was now filled with a huge amount of spiritual energy. Chu Fengmian felt that his entire body was filled with strength. Breakthrough in battle. This was something that only famous geniuses in history could do. On Chu Fengmian's arm, the 4th spiritual vein flowed with endless spiritual energy. This breakthrough allowed Chu Fengmian to open up the 4th spiritual vein in one go. His realm forcefully broke through to the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm. Breaking through 3 levels in one go. If this news were to spread, the entire victorious martial continent would be shaken. For an ordinary martial artist, it would take at least 2 to 3 years to break through a level. Some of the less talented ones might not even be able to break through a level in 10 or 20 years. Even the famous geniuses broke through one level at a time. No one was like Chu Fengmian, who could break through 3 levels in one go. This was the magical part of the broken bone rebirth art. Chu Fengmian didn't accumulate spiritual energy for a breakthrough. He had been saving it for breaking through the spiritual vein. The moment the spiritual vein broke through, the accumulated spiritual energy would explode at the same time, causing his realm to rise rapidly. Because of this, Chu Fengmian usually had a hard time breaking through. However, every time he broke through, he would break through the spiritual vein. This time, all of you will die. Chu Fengmian roared. His figure flashed, and he rushed in front of a middle-aged man again. This middle-aged man had already reacted. The heavy sword in his hand was already falling. However, Chu Fengmian's dark green sword collided with the heavy sword and sent it flying. When he was at the 5th level of the bone-tempering realm, Chu Fengmian already had the strength to fight against a martial artist at the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm. Now that Chu Fengmian had broken through, these middle-aged men were already dead to him. Hiss! Another sword fell, and at the same time, it represented the death of another middle-aged man. In the blink of an eye, the two middle-aged men were killed by Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, Chu Fengmian also discovered a cyan pouch on the waist of the middle-aged man. Storage bag. This storage bag could hold 1 cubic meter of items. It was considered a rare item in Martial Forest City. In the Lin Mansion, only the few elders of the Lin Mansion could afford it. These middle-aged men were indeed from the Wusheng Academy. They were all extremely wealthy. Chu Fengmian didn't hold back. After killing the middle-aged man, Chu Fengmian seized the storage pouch and rushed towards the other middle-aged man. In 10 breaths of time, the 8 middle-aged men had all died under Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, 9 more storage pouches appeared on Chu Fengmian's waist. You are the last one. Chu Fengmian raised his head and looked at the young hall master. All of this had aroused the young hall master's greed. He had just wanted to kill Chu Fengmian and extract his soul. This time, Chu Fengmian would definitely not let him go. Run! The young hall master could see the killing intent in Chu Fengmian's eyes. He moved his feet and executed his movement technique to escape into the forest. However, the young hall master was only at the 7th level of the bone-tempering realm. His movement technique couldn't be compared to Chu Fengmian's phantom movement technique. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian was already in front of him. He grabbed the young hall master's clothes and threw him to the ground. Pfft! The young hall master spat out a mouthful of blood. I'm from the Wusheng Academy. I'm a disciple of the Wusheng Academy. You can't kill me. The young hall master shouted as he fell to the ground. He looked at Chu Fengmian and shouted. Those trash are just slaves. So what if they're dead? I'm an inner disciple of the Wusheng Academy. If I die, the Wusheng Academy will take revenge on you. Wusheng Academy. This name was definitely a supreme name in the Wusheng nation. This was especially true for the inner disciples of the Wusheng Academy. They were the elites of the Wusheng Academy. Anyone who killed an inner disciple of the Wusheng Academy would definitely be hunted down by the Wusheng Academy. The young hall master said hurriedly. He was sure that Chu Fengmian wouldn't dare to kill him after knowing his identity. Oh? Chu Fengmian looked at the young hall master with interest and didn't say anything. He couldn't believe that there was such a foolish person in the world. Chu Fengmian had killed the 9 middle-aged men today. He had already made a huge enemy of the young hall master. Moreover, Chu Fengmian didn't want to reveal the secret of his swordsmanship and movement technique. The people from the Lin Mansion were inexperienced. Even if they saw it, they wouldn't understand its value. Therefore, it didn't matter. However, the young hall master was from the Wusheng Academy. Naturally, he would be able to see through the mystery. Chu Fengmian didn't kill the young hall master today. If he let him go, he would be waiting for the young hall master to find someone to deal with him. Seeing that Chu Fengmian didn't say anything, the young hall master calmed down. He thought that Chu Fengmian didn't dare to make a move after hearing the name of the Wusheng Academy. This made the greed in the young hall master's heart surge again. Kid, let me tell you. I'm not only an inner disciple of the Wusheng Academy. My father is also the hall master of the Wuyan Hall. He has a high status in the Wusheng Academy. The young hall master continued, and there was a hint of threat in his tone. I can let bygones be bygones. I can even let you enter the Wusheng Academy and become a disciple. As long as you hand over your swordsmanship and movement technique, I can guarantee that I will let bygones be bygones. What do you think? With your talent, when I return to the Wusheng Academy, I'll report to the academy and let you join. What do you think? The young hall master thought coldly as he spoke. He thought that there wouldn't be any danger on this trip to the barbaric mountain range. Therefore, he brought along a few slaves. He didn't expect to meet Chu Fengmian. If he returned to the Wusheng Academy, there would be many experts there. Chu Fengmian could do whatever he wanted to him. He could take revenge for the humiliation he suffered today. Before he could finish his thoughts, he saw that there was something wrong with Chu Fengmian's eyes. Chu Fengmian shook his head and looked at the young hall master. I didn't expect the Wusheng Academy to have such a foolish person. Almost at the same time, Chu Fengmian's sword fell and pierced towards the young hall master's chest. Bam! The sword didn't pierce through the young hall master's chest as Chu Fengmian expected. Chapter 25. There was a jade talisman hanging around the young hall master's neck. The jade talisman was slowly releasing spiritual energy to form a barrier that blocked Chu Fengmian's sword. This is a protective jade talisman? Chu Fengmian frowned when he saw the jade talisman. The protective jade talisman was a special spiritual artifact. It was at least of the mysterious grade. They were created by some high-ranked cultivators infusing spirit jades and spirit energy into them. Normally, they were given to some of the young geniuses of the large clans by the elders to protect them. The barrier formed by the protective jade talisman could last for at least several hours. The barrier in front of Chu Fengmian was impossible to break unless it was a warrior in the body-refining realm. Chu Fengmian didn't expect the young hall master to have a protective jade talisman. Kid, you can't kill me today. The young hall master looked at the barrier and sneered. Once the protective jade talisman is activated, my father will know that I'm in danger. When the disciples of the martial flame hall arrive, it will be your death. Don't worry, I won't let you die so quickly. I'll extract your soul and refine it so that you die slowly. I can only leave now. Chu Fengmian glanced at the young hall master and knew that he had no chance this time. The young hall master wasn't wrong. The protective jade talisman contained the spiritual energy of a high-level warrior. Once it was activated, the warrior would know that he was in danger. It was extremely dangerous to stay here. He could only leave now. Chu Fengmian didn't hesitate. He moved and ran toward the depths of the barbaric mountain range. I missed a chance. But the barbaric mountain range is vast. Even if the people of the Martial Victory Academy come, they won't be able to find me in a short time. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The young hall master didn't know his identity. This way, he could buy some time. As long as I have some time, I'll be able to resist the Martial Flame Hall and the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian thought to himself and ran toward the depths of the barbaric mountain range again. Now that he had made a breakthrough in his cultivation, he could look for some more powerful demonic beasts to hunt. Chu Fengmian's strength had broken through to the 8th level of the bone tempering stage. At the same time, he had opened his 4th spiritual vein. Even if he were to face a body tempering stage demonic beast, Chu Fengmian was confident that he would be able to fight it. I have to increase my strength as soon as possible. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. With the influence of the Martial Victory Academy, it wouldn't take long for them to uncover Chu Fengmian's identity. Chu Fengmian had to increase his strength as much as possible before his identity was exposed. Along the way, Chu Fengmian had already killed all of the 8th and 9th level bone tempering stage demonic beasts he encountered. One after another, the monster cores fell into Chu Fengmian's bag of holding. Even though these middle-aged men from the Martial Victory Academy are just servants, they are all extremely wealthy. In a cave, Chu Fengmian sat down and took out all the items from the 9 bags of holding. In one breath, he took out nearly 50 jade bottles of various sizes. These jade bottles were filled with all sorts of medicinal pills. Among them, the most abundant was a type of medicinal pill the size of a white longan. These elixirs took up a total of 40 jade bottles, which meant that there were about 400 to 500 elixirs. These must be the energy-gathering elixirs refined by the Martial Victory Academy. Chu Fengmian examined one of the energy-gathering elixirs. The energy-gathering elixir was an upper yellow class elixir. It was extremely rare in the martial forest city. Chu Fengmian had seen it once in the Lin Mansion. Only the true geniuses of the Lin Mansion would be given it to cultivate. The spiritual energy of this energy-gathering elixir was 10 times that of the body-honing elixir and 100 times that of the bone-tempering elixir. In terms of value, it was worth thousands of bone-tempering elixirs. Chu Fengmian's monthly salary in the Lin Mansion as the chief steward of the Outer Mansion was worth at most 2 energy-gathering elixirs. Now that he had obtained nearly 500 of them, it was definitely a huge fortune. It was equivalent to 20 years of Chu Fengmian's salary in the Lin Mansion. A servant from the Martial Victory Academy has more assets than some of the Inner Mansion's genius disciples. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but shake his head. The difference was too big. These middle-aged men weren't even true disciples of the Martial Victory Academy. They were just servants. Their wealth made Chu Fengmian jealous. Compared to the Martial Victory Academy, even 1,000 or 10,000 Lin Mansions wouldn't be able to compete with it. This time, Chu Fengmian had made a fortune. With this batch of energy-gathering elixirs, I won't be short of elixirs in the barbaric mountain range. Chu Fengmian's face revealed a smile. These people from the Martial Victory Academy had given Chu Fengmian a big gift. Chu Fengmian had used up all the elixirs he had brought. This time, it was all replenished. Let's go and continue hunting monsters. Chu Fengmian calmed himself down and walked out again. With these energy-gathering elixirs, Chu Fengmian had to spend time recovering his spiritual energy. As long as his spiritual energy was insufficient, he could refine a few of them. It was enough to replenish the spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's body. The efficiency of cultivation had more than doubled compared to before. Roar! The moment Chu Fengmian stepped out of the cave, a loud roar suddenly came from the other side of the forest. What kind of monster is that roar? Chu Fengmian felt his head swell when he heard the roar. He immediately moved his feet and activated the phantom body technique, carefully passing through the dense forest. Behind the dense forest was a cliff. At the bottom of the cliff, a giant bear stood up. It looked to be 5 or 6 meters tall. The roar just now came from it. A mountain barbarian bear? And a mountain barbarian bear in the body refining realm. Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he saw the giant bear. The mountain barbarian bear was one of the most difficult monsters to deal with in the outskirts of the barbaric mountain range. Its body was huge, and its strength was hundreds of times stronger than a martial artist's. This mountain barbarian bear's strength was enough to enter the body refining realm. Even 4 or 5 body refining realm martial artists might not be able to kill this mountain barbarian bear. Someone actually wants to kill this mountain barbarian bear? Chu Fengmian's eyes flickered. He was a little surprised. This was because he saw 5 figures standing around the mountain barbarian bear. There were 3 men and 2 women. They looked young, at most 20 years old. Their strength was between the 9th level of the bone-tempering realm and the peak of the bone-tempering realm. None of them had entered the body refining realm. Chapter 26. This crag bear is really difficult to deal with. Our martial skills can't even hurt it. One of the men slashed at the crag bear with his sword, but it only left a white mark. His expression changed drastically. This was an all-out attack from him, yet it couldn't even hurt the barbarian rock bear. What should we do? If this goes on, we'll all die here. Another woman said. They were trying their best to avoid the crag bear's attacks, but they would occasionally be scratched by the flying rocks. They were all covered in injuries. You guys go, I'll hold the crag bear back. I'm the one who decided to come out. I'll die, but you guys have to go back alive. The strongest man, who was also the leader, said coldly. These words were spoken with great determination. It seemed like he was already determined to die. Right now, the best solution was to use one person's life to stall the mountain barbarian bear. Only then would the others have a chance to escape alive. Senior brother Mo Chanhen, we agreed to come out this time. If you want to go back, we'll go back together. The woman shouted loudly. "We can't leave you behind. Let's go, it'll be too late if we don't." Imo Chanhen shouted angrily. He charged at the crag bear again and slashed at it with his sword, but he was sent flying by the crag bear's paw and fell to the ground. Although these people are young, they're all smart. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself as he hid in the woods and watched the scene. Between cultivators, friendship and kinship were extremely indifferent. Everyone prioritized themselves. If it were any other cultivator in such a situation, they would have fled long ago. However, these 5 young men were still persevering, which made Chu Fengmian have a good impression of them. Looks like I'll have to take action. I've never fought against a body-tempering realm beast. This crag bear is just right. Chu Fengmian snorted in his heart. He suddenly jumped out of the woods and stabbed at the crag bear with his sword. Someone's here? Seeing the figure that suddenly appeared, the 5 young men were delighted. Finally, a helper had arrived. However, when they saw Chu Fengmian's cultivation level, the joy that had just appeared on their faces dimmed. 8th level of the bone tempering stage. This level of strength was not even comparable to the weakest amongst them. Even if the 5 of them joined forces, they were still no match for this mountain barbarian bear. What was the point of having one more person? Friend, I know you're helping me out of goodwill. However, this barbarian rock bear is a body refinement stage demonic beast. You'd better leave quickly to avoid danger. Imo Chanhen hurriedly said when he saw Chu Fengmian standing beside him. This is our business. It has nothing to do with you. You don't have to get involved in such danger. Imo Chanhen said. With Chu Fengmian's strength, he would be courting death if he got involved. He was only at the 8th level of the bone tempering stage. He couldn't even take a single hit from the rocky barbaric bear. It's all right. Chu Fengmian said with a smile. Without waiting for Imo Chanhen to speak again, Chu Fengmian charged towards the barbarian rock bear. Ah! The 2 ladies didn't dare to look at Chu Fengmian. They could already imagine Chu Fengmian's miserable state when he was sent flying. However, although a miserable shriek rang out, it didn't belong to Chu Fengmian. It belonged to the barbarian rock bear. SSS. The black sword in Chu Fengmian's hand accurately pierced the barbarian rock bear's left eye. The barbarian rock bear roared loudly, completely enraged. Be careful. Imo Chanhen couldn't help but warn when he saw the barbarian rock bear go berserk. However, the next scene left him dumbfounded. The barbarian rock bear's attack was easily dodged by Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian stood beside the barbarian rock bear, continuously stabbing the barbarian rock bear's body with his black sword. However, the barbarian rock bear didn't manage to land a single hit on Chu Fengmian. What kind of movement skill is that? How mysterious. Is this really something an 8th level bone tempering stage martial artist can do? The remaining few people were dumbfounded as they watched Chu Fengmian fight the barbarian rock bear. Every stab and pull out of the barbarian rock bear's body was done cleanly without any hesitation. The barbarian rock bear was enraged to the extreme. It frantically slapped the area around its body, but not once did it manage to land a hit on Chu Fengmian. In less than a minute, Chu Fengmian had already stabbed the barbarian rock bear dozens of times with his sword. I'm almost done for. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. The barbarian rock bear's defense was really terrifying. Chu Fengmian had to use all his strength to stab the barbarian rock bear, but he still couldn't land a fatal blow. After stabbing the barbarian rock bear so many times, it had already lost half of its blood. It didn't have much strength left. It was enough to kill it in one strike. Phantom. Chu Fengmian purposely made a mistake so that the barbarian rock bear would think that Chu Fengmian had fallen in front of it. Oh no! Hurry up and save him! Imo Chanhen hurriedly shouted when he saw this scene. However, before he could make a move, he realized that the barbarian rock bear that had fallen to the ground was just a shadow. Chu Fengmian's real body had already arrived at the barbarian rock bear's neck. 9 sword strikes in one strike. Chu Fengmian roared in his heart as he stabbed the barbarian rock bear's neck with his sword. The sword strike seemed ordinary, but it contained the power of 9 swords. It chopped off the barbarian rock bear's head in one fell swoop. The 5-meter-tall beast fell to the ground with a loud boom. Silence. There was no longer any sound below the cliff. The 5 people stared at the barbarian rock bear that had fallen to the ground in a daze. It's dead. The barbarian rock bear was killed by a single person. They were all stunned. The barbarian rock bear was not harmed by the 5 of them when they attacked it together. However, it was killed by Chu Fengmian in less than 5 minutes. Is this really something that an 8th-level bone-tempering martial artist can do? One of the men gulped. He could not believe what he had just seen. In an instant, all of their gazes were focused on Chu Fengmian. They only reacted when Chu Fengmian cut open the barbarian rock bear's head and took out its monster core. Thank you for saving our lives, my friend. Mo Changhen stood at the side and looked at Chu Fengmian with gratitude. If Chu Fengmian had made a move this time, it would have been impossible for them to escape unscathed. The best outcome would have been for one of them to stay and the rest to escape. Chapter 27. Wusheng Academy, another disciple of Wusheng Academy. When Chu Fengmian heard Mo Changhen's words, he thought to himself that he was fated with Wusheng Academy. First, he met the young hall master. Now, he met these 5 youths. However, these 5 youths were much better than the young hall master. They did not have an arrogant attitude and valued friendship. This was the reason why Chu Fengmian chose to help them. Martial Forest City, Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian glanced at Mo Changhen and said calmly. Martial Forest City. Mo Changhen was a little surprised. This place was not famous. On the contrary, it was extremely obscure. With Chu Fengmian's terrifying strength, he actually came from an obscure place. They originally thought that Chu Fengmian was a genius nurtured by a major faction. They did not expect him to come from a small and remote city. Big brother Chu, it's all thanks to your help this time. Otherwise, we would have died in the hands of the mountain bear. A man hurriedly expressed his gratitude. This man did not look old. He was only 16 or 17 years old. Now, he was extremely excited after surviving a calamity. How long, you still have the nerve to say that? If you did not persuade senior brother Mo, why would we want to hunt the mountain bear? A girl complained. However, her tone was much more relaxed. I'm Jianwang. I'm also an inner disciple of Wusheng Academy. I'm Wang Yi. My name is Yu Zhanqing. In the end, the girl who looked the youngest spoke. Thank you big brother Chu for saving us. No need to thank me. It's just a small matter. Chu Fengmian said calmly. He'd saved these people by chance, and he'd come over when he heard the barbarian rock bear's roar. He'd saved these people in passing, and it wasn't like he'd come over to covet the benefits. With your strength, it's too dangerous here. Go to the outskirts of the barbaric mountain range. You won't be so lucky if you encounter some body refinement realm monsters. Chu Fengmian looked at them and said. Chu Fengmian could tell that these people should be young disciples of Wusheng Academy. They had just come out to train and did not have much experience. Otherwise, they would not have been so reckless to hunt the mountain bear. Yes, the 5 of them blushed. If it weren't for Chu Fengmian, that rocky barbarian bear would have been enough to take their lives. Seeing Chu Fengmian, who was in the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm, speaking to them, the 5 of them felt a little strange. However, realms didn't mean anything. Strength was the only thing that mattered. Chu Fengmian had just killed the barbarian rock bear by himself. This kind of strength was probably stronger than the 5 of them combined. Where did this monster come from? He's able to fight above his cultivation level. Even the monstrous geniuses of the Martial Victory Institute are no match for him. The 5 of them couldn't help but think. The Martial Victory Academy was known as the gathering place for the geniuses of the Martial Victory country. Countless geniuses were in the academy. However, those who could fight across a small realm were considered geniuses. Those who could fight across two small realms were considered geniuses among geniuses. However, the Martial Victory Academy had never seen a bone-tempering realm cultivator fight a body-tempering realm cultivator. Furthermore, Chu Fengmian wasn't dealing with a body refinement realm martial artist, but a mountain barbarian bear. Demonic beasts of the same realm were much more difficult to deal with than martial artists of the same realm. Compared to Chu Fengmian, the so-called geniuses they had seen in the academy were like trash. Be careful when you leave. I, Chu, will be leaving as well. Chu Fengmian glanced at the five of them and instructed them before he prepared to leave. After killing the mountain barbarian bear, Chu Fengmian was aware of his current strength. At the very least, Chu Fengmian was strong enough to kill a demonic beast that had just stepped into the body refinement realm. In this way, Chu Fengmian could choose to hunt some body refinement realm demonic beasts. The stronger the opponent, the faster Chu Fengmian's strength and swordsmanship would improve. Big brother Chu, wait. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was about to leave, Hao Lan suddenly called out to him. Big brother Chu, did you come to the barbaric mountain range to train? That's right. Chu Fengmian turned around and nodded. He came to the barbaric mountain range for two reasons. First, to train. Second, to hunt demonic beasts and obtain monster cores to exchange for elixirs. An 8th level bone tempering realm monster core was enough to exchange for several body refinement elixirs. To Chu Fengmian, now was the time when he needed elixirs. Therefore, he planned to hunt more demonic beasts in the barbaric mountain range to obtain monster cores. Then, Big brother Chu, do you want to join us? Hao Lan suddenly spoke. Junior brother Hao. Wang He, who was at the side, frowned. He wanted Hao Lan to stop talking. Senior brother Wang, now that big brother Chu has saved our lives, we naturally have to repay him. Moreover, you can see that the barbaric mountain range is filled with danger. With our strength, it's too difficult to obtain the Emperor Luan grass. Emperor Luan grass? Hearing this name, a strange expression flashed past Chu Fengmian's eyes. The Emperor Luan grass was a top-grade earth-rank spiritual herb. To a cultivator, it had the effect of consolidating one's essence. Especially for a cultivator below the age of 30, a stalk of Emperor Luan grass was enough to change one's aptitude. It could be said that a stalk of Emperor Luan grass was enough to create a peerless genius. Because of this, the price of the Emperor Luan grass was even higher than some heaven-rank spiritual herbs. Seeing the strange expression in Chu Fengmian's eyes, Hao Lan continued to speak. That's right, big brother Chu. When we passed by a pool earlier, we discovered that there were a few stalks of Emperor Luan grass on the small island in the center of the pool. However, there was a dark water cold snake that had reached the body refinement realm in the pool. We originally planned to ask the elders of the academy to help us deal with the dark water cold snake. However, with Big Brother Chu's help, it might be enough to deal with the dark water cold snake and obtain the Emperor Luan grass. Dark water cold snake. Amongst the demonic beasts, it was an extremely powerful species. It was said that the dark water cold snake possessed the bloodline of a flood dragon. When it matured and cultivated, it could become a flood dragon. Normally, an adult dark water cold snake's strength would reach the peak of the body refinement realm. However, from Hao Lan's words, the dark water cold snake should still be underage. If it had just stepped into the body refinement realm, Chu Fengmian would have the strength to fight. The Emperor Luan grass was especially valuable to Chu Fengmian. If we can really obtain it, Chu Fengmian wants a stalk of Emperor Luan grass. Chu Fengmian looked at Hao Lan and said, No problem. Hao Lan agreed and turned her head to look at Mo Changhen. Chapter 28. I agree. Mo Changhen pondered for a moment and nodded. There was more than one Emperor Luan grass. If they could get one, it wouldn't hurt to give one to Chu Fengmian. After all, if they waited for the experts from Wusheng Academy to arrive, they wouldn't be able to get a single Emperor Luan grass. We agree too. Seeing Mo Changhen nodding, Yun Jialan and Yu Zhanqing also nodded in agreement. Mo Changhen was the leader of their group. Moreover, Chu Fengmian had saved their lives earlier. One Emperor Wang grass was more than enough to repay his kindness. Only Wang Yi was hesitant, as if he wanted to say something. However, seeing that everyone agreed, he could only nod helplessly to show his agreement. All right, let's not delay any longer. Otherwise, it will be bad if we are discovered by others. Hao Lan hurriedly said when she saw that everyone had agreed. Everyone swallowed a few medicinal pills and healed their injuries. Then, they hurriedly left. There's one more thing. Chu Fengmian suddenly said when they were about to leave. This puzzled the other five, especially Wang Yi. There was already a hint of impatience on his face. He didn't want to share the Emperor Wang grass with Chu Fengmian. Now that Chu Fengmian had something to say, he became even more impatient. I have a grudge with someone from Wusheng Academy. If I go with you, I may implicate you. You must think carefully. Chu Fengmian said. He didn't intend to hide his conflict with the young hall master of Wu Yan Hall. After all, it was caused by Chu Fengmian. He didn't want to implicate others. Someone from Wusheng Academy? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the five of them looked a little strange. Who is it? Mo Chanhan was the first to ask. Even if they were from Wusheng Academy, there was a hierarchy. If it was just an ordinary disciple, they wouldn't need to care. I don't know his name, but he said he was the young hall master of Wu Yan Hall. Chu Fengmian said. The Wusheng Academy was divided into countless halls. Even with the memories of Chu Fengmian's body, he only knew of the existence of the Wusheng Academy. He did not know much about the various matters within the Wusheng Academy. Young hall master of Wu Yan Hall? Ding Hao? Mo Chanhan blurted out. Obviously, he had also figured out who it was. As expected, it's him. I've always said that the only person who causes trouble every day is this trash. Hao Lan said coldly. Obviously, she did not have a good impression of Ding Hao. That's right. This fellow has indeed come to the desolate mountain range for training. Although he said that he is here for training, he actually brought a bunch of slaves with him. Mo Changhen said coldly. Given Ding Hao's character, he had a bad reputation in Wusheng Academy. Brother Chu, don't worry. Even if Ding Hao comes, just say that you're our friend. I want to see what he can do. Mo Chanhen glanced at Chu Fengmian and said indifferently. Especially when they mentioned Ding Hao, their tone was full of disdain, which made Chu Fengmian a little surprised. After all, Ding Hao was the young hall master of one of the halls in Wusheng Academy, yet these people did not care about him at all. It seemed like the status of this group of people was not low in the Martial Victory Academy. At the very least, those who could become inner disciples would have some influence. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. It was not easy to become an inner disciple of Wusheng Academy. Generally speaking, ordinary warriors could enter Wusheng Academy. It was not easy to become an outer disciple. As for inner disciples, only the geniuses among geniuses could enter. Apart from the true monstrous geniuses, most of the inner disciples were disciples of the major clans in Wusheng Academy, or disciples of the hall masters of the various halls. Brother Chu, don't worry. If Ding Hao dares to find trouble with you, I'll deal with him. Hao Lan said with a laugh. Let's go. We should go to the pool. Yes, the Emperor Wan grass is more important. Let's hurry. The group of people hurriedly moved and walked towards the pool. Danger was everywhere in the desolate mountain range. Perhaps there were extremely dangerous demonic beasts hidden in ordinary places. After Chu Fengmian inquired about the specific location of the pool, he walked at the very front and led the group of people to walk. Along the way, Chu Fengmian walked in front and could occasionally hear the conversations of the people behind him. Senior Mo, why did you agree to give him the Emperor Wan grass? You should know how precious the Emperor Wan grass is. It can be exchanged for hundreds of thousands of contribution points in Wusheng Academy. Wang Yi secretly glanced at Chu Fengmian. When he saw that Chu Fengmian was walking in front, he said to Mo Chanhen. In my opinion, he's not a disciple of any major faction. Giving him some benefits should be enough. It's a waste to give him a stalk of Emperor Yuan grass. Hao Lan said indignantly when she heard Wang Yi's words. Wang Yi, you're wrong. Brother Chu just saved our lives. Is a stalk of Emperor Yuan grass not worth the lives of the 5 of us? No, he saved our lives. When we return to Wuxing Academy, we can repay him. But the price of the Emperor Yuan grass is too high. Wang Yi's words were filled with greed. A stalk of Emperor Yuan grass was definitely worth a lot. Now that he thought about giving it away for free, his heart ached. Junior Wang, don't say anymore. I've already agreed to it. A stalk of Emperor Yuan grass is enough to repay Brother Chu for saving our lives. Imo Chanhen said calmly. That's right. Senior Wang, you're too stingy. Can our lives be worth a stalk of Emperor Yuan grass? Yun Jiawan, who had been silent all this while, spoke up. She was dissatisfied with Wang Yi's words. Damn it. All of you. Being targeted by everyone, Wang Yi also understood that he could not say anything now. He could only snort coldly and leave silently. All of you don't understand the value of the Emperor Yuan grass. All of you are targeting me. This brat saved us. He must have taken a liking to our identities and wants to get some benefits. Wang Yi thought viciously as he walked at the back of the group. This was the conversation between Wang Yi and the others. Even though their voices were soft, Chu Fengmian could still hear them clearly. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sneer. Many cultivators valued benefits more than anything else. They would do anything for resources. Wang Yi was clearly such a person. However, the injustice in his heart had nothing to do with Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian deserved the Emperor Yuan grass, but if Wang Yi dared to cause trouble, Chu Fengmian wouldn't be polite. Chapter 29. The terrain of the desolate mountain range was complicated. It was only 10 miles away from the pool, but it would take a long time to get there. Especially when there were some places that could be passed through, but if they were the territories of some powerful demonic beasts, they could only take a detour. Now that they were in the middle of the desolate mountain range, there were many body refinement stage demonic beasts. Any one of them was not to be trifled with. Stop! Chu Fengmian suddenly stopped in front of a mountain stream. Big Brother Chu, what's wrong? Hao Lan asked from behind, finding it strange. Take a detour. There are demonic beasts in this mountain stream that are not easy to deal with. Chu Fengmian looked at the mountain stream and calmly said. As he spoke, he planned to walk to the right. Take a detour? Hearing his words, the 5 people behind him frowned and looked around. The mountain stream was surrounded by tall mountains. If they wanted to take a detour, it would definitely waste a lot of time. If there were really demonic beasts that were not easy to deal with, taking a detour was the safest choice. However, once they took a detour, it would waste a lot more time. Wang Yi furrowed his brows and said with some resentment in his voice. Chu Fengmian, you've already taken a detour 4 or 5 times and wasted so much time. What if the Emperor Phoenix grass was taken by others? Wang Yi, what are you talking about? Didn't Big Brother Chu say that? There are demonic beasts in this mountain stream. Hao Lan could not help but refute Wang Yi's words. Chu Fengmian saved them without asking for any benefits. This made Hao Lan have a good impression of Chu Fengmian. After that, even the Emperor Phoenix grass was brought up by him. Chu Fengmian asking for one of the Emperor Phoenix grass was nothing. After all, if it was a greedy cultivator, they would probably become hostile and capture them. At that time, they would ask where the Emperor Phoenix grass was and kill them to silence them. In the world of cultivators, such things were common. Because of this, Hao Lan's face showed some anger when she heard Wang Yi's words. Who knows if it's true or not? We didn't even see a shadow of a demonic beast along the way. Wang Yi coldly snorted, his voice full of suspicion. I suspect that he is intentionally stalling for time so that others can snatch the Emperor Yuan grass before us. This way, he can keep it for himself. As Wang Yi spoke, although he sounded skeptical, his gaze toward Chu Fengmian was already filled with hostility. Yu Zhanqing said from the side. It can't be. Brother Chu has always been with us. It's impossible for him to spread the news. Who knows if he has a sound transmission jade talisman and sent out the news long ago. Look, we've been through this mountain stream before. There are no demonic beasts there. It's dangerous. Wang Yi pointed at the mountain stream and said. This caused the other people's expressions to change slightly. Indeed, they didn't encounter any demonic beasts when they walked past this mountain stream. After Wang Yi finished speaking, he looked at Chu Fengmian with a sneer on his face. He wanted to see how Chu Fengmian would explain himself. If you don't believe me, you can go there yourself. Chu Fengmian glanced at Wang Yi and said calmly. If you believe me, you can take a detour with me. There was the aura of demonic beasts in the mountain stream ahead. Chu Fengmian's intuition couldn't be wrong. Although his cultivation level wasn't high, Chu Fengmian's sword intent was truly terrifying. When one's sword intent was cultivated to an extremely high level, it was enough to see through danger. Naturally, Chu Fengmian could sense the danger in the mountain stream. Chu Fengmian had already warned them. If they didn't believe him, there was nothing he could do. I knew you wouldn't be able to explain yourself. After hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Wang Yi's face was filled with pride. It was as if he had guessed correctly. However, Chu Fengmian couldn't be bothered to explain. After all, it was up to them whether they believed him or not. Senior brother Mo, let's walk through the mountain stream. This way, we can save a lot of time. We can also see what this kid is up to. Wang Yi walked to Mo Chanhen's side and said. Mo Zhanghen was actually the leader of their group. It was important to convince Mo Zhanghen. Let's play it safe. Mo Chanhen pondered for a moment before looking at Chu Fengmian and saying. Since there are demonic beasts ahead, let's take a detour. All right. Since senior brother Mo has said so, let's take a detour. Yu Zhanqing and Yun Jialan nodded. The two of them trusted Mo Chanhen the most. Since Mo Chanhen had spoken, they would naturally follow. As for Hao Lan, she trusted Chu Fengmian. In this way, including Chu Fengmian, there were a total of 5 people who wanted to take a detour. He was the only one who wanted to go through the mountain stream. You guys. Wang Yi's face turned red. He didn't expect that no one would listen to him. Damn it. Look and see if there are any demonic beasts in the mountain stream. Wang Yi let out a furious roar as he walked toward the mountain stream. Junior brother Wang, it's dangerous. Mo Chanhen hurriedly shouted from the side. However, Wang Yi didn't listen to him at all. His footsteps became faster and faster. He quickened his steps and walked into the mountain stream. Look! There are no demonic beasts. It's just that kid trying to be mysterious. To think that you are all inner disciples of the Martial Victory Academy. You are all being tricked by a wild kid who came out of nowhere. When he reached the entrance of the mountain stream, Wang Yi turned around and said coldly. Do you see that? This mountain stream. Ah! Before Wang Yi could finish his words, a huge net fell from the sky and trapped Wang Yi's body. Demonic beast. Mo Chanhen's face changed when he saw the net. It's a hunter spider. In the crevice of the mountain stream, a 2 to 3 meter long black spider crawled out. When it saw Wang Yi fall into the net, it let out a few hisses. It seemed to be celebrating the capture of someone. A peak-tempered bone stage hunter spider. Hunter spiders were extremely difficult to deal with among the demonic beasts. They could weave a colorless net and wait for a warrior to step into it. They would use the net to trap the warrior's body, making it impossible for the warrior to break free. The net was extremely tough. Once trapped, death was certain. A peak-tempered bone stage hunter spider. What should we do? Mo Chanhen, Hao Lan, and the others' faces changed. However, no one dared to step forward. This was because once the hunter spider appeared, the surroundings would be covered with spider webs. If they acted rashly, it was very likely that they would step into the web and suffer the same fate as Wang Yi. Save me! Save me! Wang Yi, who was trapped in the web, saw the hunter spider approaching. His face was extremely pale. Chapter 30. Big Brother Chu. Hao Lan turned around and looked at Chu Fengmian. She was at a loss for words. It was Wang Yi who didn't listen to Chu Fengmian and wanted to provoke him. Now, he was the one who fell into the hunter spider's trap. However, Wang Yi was their comrade from Wusheng Academy. Hao Lan couldn't bear to see him die in front of them. The only person who could deal with the hunter spider was Chu Fengmian. Okay. Before Hao Lan could say anything, Chu Fengmian nodded and agreed. In Chu Fengmian's hand, he suddenly pulled out the dark azure sword and charged toward the mountain stream ahead. The instant Chu Fengmian stepped into the mountain stream, the surroundings seemed to cover the sky and earth. No less than 7 or 8 spider webs surrounded Chu Fengmian. Big Brother Chu, be careful. Yu Zhanqing shouted worriedly. Once one was touched by any one of these spider webs, one would be trapped within. If one wanted to escape, one would have to reach the body refinement stage and use their strength to forcefully break the spider webs. Otherwise, it would be impossible to escape. Limitless sword dance. Chu Fengmian's face was calm. Facing the spider webs coming from all directions, his face was as calm as ever. It was as if he didn't care even if there was great danger. The most important thing for a cultivator was to be calm. The more dangerous the situation was, the more one needed to be calm. Hiss. Chu Fengmian slashed with the profound azure sword in his hand. In almost an instant, he slashed more than 10 times and cut the surrounding spider webs. Hiss hiss hiss. Seeing Chu Fengmian break the carefully laid trap, the hunter spider let out a hissing sound. It was as if it was enraged. Its huge body immediately pounced toward Chu Fengmian. It spat out a mouthful of venom. The most terrifying thing about the hunter spider was not only its spider webs, but also its venom. The venom was enough to corrode a person's flesh. Once touched, it would gradually melt the flesh. Phantom. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself. His body was covered by the venom. However, the venom only covered Chu Fengmian's afterimage. Chu Fengmian's real body had already arrived behind the hunter spider. When the hunter spider sensed it and wanted to turn around, Chu Fengmian's sword had already pierced the hunter spider's head. Bang! Blood spurted out, and the hunter spider's huge body fell to the ground. The demonic core of the hunter spider can be sold for a good price. Chu Fengmian walked to the hunter spider's corpse, cut open its head, and took out a Yao core. He muttered as he put it into his storage pouch. Junior Wang, are you all right? Beside him, Mo Changhan also hurried forward and cut off the spiderweb on Wang Yi's body, rescuing him. Brother Chu, we owe you another favor this time. Hao Lan said somewhat embarrassedly as she looked at Chu Fengmian at the side. It was clear that Wang Yi had fallen into Chu Fengmian's trap because he didn't trust Chu Fengmian. In the end, he still needed Chu Fengmian's help to resolve the problem. Hao Lan couldn't help but glare at Wang Yi. It's good that you're fine. However, this time around, you'll be able to prove that I'm not lying. Chu Fengmian put away his sword and said calmly. After Mo Chanhen rescued Wang Yi from the spider web, he saw that Wang Yi wasn't injured at all and hurriedly said to Wang Yi. Junior Wang, why aren't you apologizing to Brother Chu? Brother Chu, I was wrong. Wang Yi lowered his head and apologized, but his tone didn't sound like an apology at all. Instead, it was filled with resentment. He was resentful that Chu Fengmian didn't stop him from entering the mountain stream when he knew that there was a demonic beast inside. Instead, he waited for him to enter before attacking. Chu Fengmian clearly had the strength to deal with the hunter spider, but he asked them to take a detour. This made him lose face in front of everyone. Damn it! He's trying to show me who's boss. Wang Yi shouted angrily in his heart. As an inner disciple of Wusheng Academy, he was already proud and arrogant. Now that he was being ordered around by an outsider like Chu Fengmian, he couldn't accept it. Especially Mo Changhen, Hao Lan, and the others. They were all disciples of Wusheng Academy, but they didn't stand with him. Instead, they stood with Chu Fengmian and reprimanded him. So much so that when Chu Fengmian saved him, Wang Yi was still wondering why Chu Fengmian didn't stop him and kill the demon-hunting spider. Instead, he made him lose face. It's all thanks to Brother Chu this time. We owe him a big favor. Hao Lan, Mo Changhen, and the others stood beside Chu Fengmian and said embarrassedly. Looking at this scene, Wang Yi felt even more jealous. Why was Chu Fengmian, a kid from a remote place, so respected? Why was everything he said refuted by others? Naturally, Wang Yi's thoughts couldn't escape Chu Fengmian's eyes. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian had experienced too much. Now, he could see through Wang Yi's thoughts with just a glance. However, Chu Fengmian didn't intend to argue with Wang Yi. He would only give him one chance. This time, Chu Fengmian saved him. But next time, Chu Fengmian wouldn't do it again. Since the hunter spider has been killed, let's go through the mountain stream. Chu Fengmian said. When he spoke, he didn't even look at Wang Yi. To him, Wang Yi was just an insignificant person. He saved Wang Yi for the sake of Hao Lan, Mo Changhen, and the others. This time, Chu Fengmian deliberately didn't stop Wang Yi to teach him a lesson. As for whether Wang Yi listened or not, Chu Fengmian didn't care. Okay. Mo Changhen nodded his head. Going through the mountain stream was indeed the fastest way. Everyone rested for a while, then stood up and walked into the mountain stream again. After passing through the mountain stream, they vaguely saw a dense forest not far away. After passing through the dense forest, a small pool came into view. At the center of the pool, there was a golden light that could be seen at a glance. The golden light wasn't big, but it was extremely eye-catching from afar. It's really the Emperor Phoenix grass. Looking at the golden herb that looked like a flying bird, Chu Fengmian exclaimed. This was the Emperor Phoenix grass. Moreover, it looked like an extremely old Emperor Phoenix grass. The dazzling golden light was the embodiment of spiritual energy. That's right. The Emperor Phoenix grass is on the island at the center of the pool. However, there is a gloom-water cold snake in the pool. If we don't kill the gloom-water cold snake, we won't be able to enter the island. Mo Changhen said from the side. The pool wasn't big. The island was only 10 meters away from the shore. For a warrior, a few steps were enough to walk across the water. Chapter 31. The dark water cold snake only lived in some cold pools. Usually, it would hide in the pools. When some demonic beasts came to drink from the pool, the dark water cold snake would suddenly appear and drag the demonic beasts into the water to kill and devour. If he wanted to walk on the surface of the pool and reach the island above, he would be swallowed by the serene water cold snake before he could even take a second step. Looks like the only way to get the Emperor Wan grass is to lure the dark water cold snake out and kill it. Chu Fengmian glanced around. That was the only way. It's easy to say, but I don't know if you can do it. Wang Yi mocked from the side again. Shut up. This time, before Chu Fengmian could speak, Mo Changhen reprimanded him coldly. Wang Yi, if you keep talking, you can go back to the academy by yourself. You don't have to follow us. Mo Changhen's words made Wang Yi shut up obediently. He didn't dare to say anything else. If he went back now, he wouldn't get a share of the Emperor Wan grass. Although he kept his mouth shut, Chu Fengmian could still see the coldness in Wang Yi's eyes. It seemed that Wang Yi had some ideas. Brother Chu, we'll have to rely on you to kill the dark water cold snake. Seeing that Wang Yi had shut his mouth obediently, Mo Changhen felt a little more at ease. At the very least, he didn't want Wang Yi to offend Chu Fengmian. After all, they had to rely on Chu Fengmian to deal with the dark water cold snake. At most, they could help from the side. If Chu Fengmian left in anger, they could only watch from the side. Okay. Chu Fengmian nodded. For the Emperor Wan grass, Chu Fengmian had to give it his all. A single Emperor Wan grass was enough to transform his current body. The aptitude of Chu Fengmian's current body could be said to be extremely poor. Although he could use the broken bone rebirth art to slowly open up his spirit veins, Compared to a true genius, Chu Fengmian couldn't even find a starting line. To become a true expert, one's foundation and talent were the most important. Therefore, Chu Fengmian was determined to get the Emperor on grass. "You guys stay away." Chu Fengmian turned around and said. Then, he walked to the edge of the pool alone. At a glance, this pool was dark blue in color and appeared bottomless. As one approached the pool, a wave of cold air greeted them. Ding! Chu Fengmian's black azure sword quietly pierced into the water, causing a ripple. After that, he stood by the pool and waited. "He's here." After 3 breaths, Chu Fengmian's face suddenly turned serious. This was because he had already sensed an extremely dangerous aura rushing up from the depths of the pool. Bang! At the center of the pool, a huge figure suddenly jumped out. Seeing Chu Fengmian, the huge figure opened its mouth and pounced on Chu Fengmian. It really is a dark water cold snake that hasn't grown up yet. Chu Fengmian thought to himself when he saw the sudden appearance of the huge snake. An adult dark water cold snake could normally grow to a length of more than 10 meters. However, the dark water cold snake in front of him was only about 7 to 8 meters long. It was not fully grown yet. If it was an adult dark water cold snake, with Chu Fengmian's current strength, he could only run away. There was no way he could defeat it. After all, an adult dark water cold snake's strength was at the advanced level of the body refining realm. It could even step into the divine sea realm. However, even if it was not fully grown, the dark water cold snake in front of him had already reached the 3rd level of the body refining realm. 3rd level of the body refining realm. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. Although Chu Fengmian could easily kill a demonic beast at the 1st level of the body refining realm, it was hard to say if it was at the 3rd level of the body refining realm. Especially this dark water cold snake in front of him. It was one of the best among the demonic beasts. Its huge body was even more powerful. For the Emperor Phoenix Grass. I can only fight. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with determination. The Emperor Phoenix Grass was extremely important to him. Even if there was a glimmer of hope, Chu Fengmian had to fight for it. Phantom. The moment the dark water cold snake pounced, Chu Fengmian's body moved. He channeled all the spiritual energy in his body and activated the phantom body technique to quickly retreat to the side. Boom! The dark water cold snake's gigantic body smashed into the ground, creating a crater that was 5 to 6 meters wide. The dark water cold snake's strength was truly terrifying. The moment it came ashore, the ground around it trembled. Roar! The moment the dark water cold snake came out of the water, it brought with it countless amounts of cold water. Now, as the dark water cold snake moved, the cold water turned into ropes that filled the sky and formed a huge net, pressing down on Chu Fengmian from all directions. The art of water manipulation. Chu Fengmian's eyes were fixed. The dark water cold snake had already comprehended the art of water manipulation. Demonic beasts like the dark water cold snake were born with a noble bloodline. For warriors, only those who had stepped into the divine sea realm and understood the spiritual energy of heaven and earth could learn the art of water manipulation. However, the dark water cold snake in front of him was already able to master the art of water manipulation even though it was still underage. This was their innate talent. They were incomparably proficient at it from birth. How can this dark water cold snake be so powerful? Mo Changhen stood aside and said in disbelief as he watched the dark water cold snake display the art of water manipulation. The strength of the dark water cold snake was worlds apart from that of the mountain barbarian bear, which was also in the body refining realm. With this art of water manipulation, even 100 mountain barbarian bears together would not be a match for the dark water cold snake. A kid from a remote place, a bumpkin. How dare he challenge the dark water cold snake with just a few moves of swordsmanship? He's really courting death. Seeing that Chu Fengmian was suppressed by the dark water cold snake's art of water manipulation, Wang Yi revealed a sinister smile. In his heart, he had already forgotten that Chu Fengmian had saved his life. Now, Wang Yi could not wait for Chu Fengmian to die in the hands of the dark water-cold snake. Oh no! Big brother Chu is going to be trapped in it. Hao Lan said. Although he was not strong, he was still from the Wuxing Academy. Naturally, he understood the strength of the dark water-cold snake. Once Chu Fengmian was trapped in it, his spiritual energy would be consumed endlessly. When his spiritual energy was exhausted, Chu Fengmian would die without a doubt. Senior brother Mo, let's work together to save big brother Chu. Hao Lan said hurriedly. He drew his sword and intended to rush forward. No need. The moment Hao Lan spoke, Chu Fengmian's figure moved. His body seemed to be dancing in the countless streams of water. What came at any time was a sword dance that filled the sky. Chapter 32. Sword Aura Transformation. Hao Lan's face was filled with shock when he saw the sword dance. He was also a sword cultivator, so he knew that it was extremely difficult to comprehend the basics of the sword principle. The next step was just to hone one's swordsmanship. However, the sword chi manifestation was a completely different realm. The condensation of sword intent and the materialization of sword intent was something that only sword cultivators with extremely high attainments in sword intent could do. There were no more than 3 people in the entire Wuxing Academy who knew the sword aura transformation, and they were all elders of the academy. There had never been anyone like this among the disciples. However, Chu Fengmian's sword edge was the perfect manifestation of the sword aura transformation. Chu Fengmian could no longer hide his strength when facing the ghastly water snake. He displayed the strongest sword principle he had ever displayed in his previous life. Since you want to fight, let's fight to our heart's content. Chu Fengmian shouted and slashed at the ghastly water snake with the black azure sword in his hand. As Chu Fengmian drew his sword, several streaks of sword aura materialized and turned into sword edges. They slashed at the ghastly water snake. They hit the ghastly water snake's scales and made a crisp sound. Roar! The ghastly water snake looked at Chu Fengmian in shock. He did not expect that the person in front of him, who seemed like an ant to him, would suddenly display such terrifying sword intent. However, after the shock, it was more eager to fight. A monster's instinct was to fight. They would not back down when they met an expert. They would only fight. The 2 figures intertwined on the shore of the pool. The sword edge and the ghastly water snake's body kept colliding. This kind of battle is not something we can participate in. If we do, we will only distract Brother Chu. Mo Changhen said with a sigh. He was unwilling to give up. As an inner disciple of the Wuxing Academy, they were worthy of being called geniuses in the academy. However, they could not interfere in the battle between Chu Fengmian and the ghastly water snake. They could not even help. A casual attack from the ghastly water snake was enough to seriously injure them or even kill them. Is he really an 8th-level bone-tempering martial artist? Yun Jialan stared blankly at the battle in front of her. Could a martial artist at the 8th level of the bone-tempering stage really do that? Even a martial artist at the 3rd level of the body refinement realm would not be able to fight the dark water-cold snake to a standstill. I'm afraid the geniuses of our Martial Victory Academy's core disciples are not worthy of the title of geniuses. Hao Lan muttered to herself. The Martial Victory Institute was known as the gathering place for all the geniuses of the Martial Victory Institute. However, compared to Chu Fengmian, those geniuses were like blocks of wood. How could this be? Wang Yi's expression was extremely gloomy. The more Wang Yi watched Chu Fengmian fight with the dark water frost snake, the more jealous he felt. He was an inner disciple of Wuxing Academy, a genius who had always been flattered by countless people. But now, in front of Chu Fengmian, his existence was worthless. How could Wang Yi accept this? He had always looked down on these natives from remote lands, yet they actually possessed enough power to overwhelm him. Wang Yi looked at the Emperor Luan grass on the island and thought greedily. Power. As long as I can get the Emperor Luan grass and improve my aptitude, this Chu Fengmian is nothing. No way. I must get the Emperor Luan grass. Sword is limitless. Chu Fengmian no longer had any scruples when his sword aura form was exposed. The current Chu Fengmian looked completely different from before. If the previous Chu Fengmian still looked a little childish, the current Chu Fengmian was definitely an invincible ancient almighty. This level of sword aura could be released at any time. This was the former Chu Fengmian, the former #1 sword aura user. Chu Fengmian condensed countless sword auras and slashed at the dark water cold snake. Bam! Bam! A few of the scales on the dark water cold snake's body were hit by the sword aura. Immediately, cracks appeared and purple blood flowed out. No matter how hard the dark water cold snake's scales were, they were all broken by the sword aura. Roar! The dark water cold snake was in pain. It suddenly realized that Chu Fengmian's power was not as weak as it looked. It had already sensed the danger of death. The gloom-water cold snake's huge body smashed towards Chu Fengmian. However, at the same time, the gloom-water cold snake's body turned around. It quickly ran towards the direction of the pool. After all, the dark water cold snake was a demonic beast in the water. When it came to the shore, it could only use less than 30% of its power. If not for the fact that Chu Fengmian was extremely weak in the eyes of the dark water cold snake, the dark water cold snake would have chased after him. The dark water cold snake's intelligence was not much inferior to a human's. When it sensed the danger, its first reaction was to return to the pool. If the dark water cold snake returned to the pool, even if Chu Fengmian stepped into the body refining realm, he might not be able to kill the dark water cold snake. After all, the dark water cold snake could dive into the pool. If Chu Fengmian chased after it, the dark water cold snake could easily kill Chu Fengmian in the water. Stop him! Chu Fengmian roared. Mo Changhan and Hao Lan reacted immediately and pulled out their swords. They faced the dark water cold snake and slashed at it. The two of them also knew that they could not let the dark water cold snake escape into the pool today. Now that the dark water cold snake was injured by Chu Fengmian's sword qi on the shore, it was the best opportunity to kill it. If the dark water cold snake was allowed to return to the pool, it would be impossible to lure it out. They could not miss this opportunity to kill it while it was weak. Bam! Bam! However, the dark water cold snake was a demonic beast at the 3rd level of the body refining realm. Even if it was injured, it was not something that Mo Changhan and Hao Lan, who were at the peak of the bone-tempering realm, could handle. The two of them were sent flying by the huge body of the dark water cold snake. Even so, it was enough to buy some time. Today, you will be killed. Chu Fengmian looked at the dark water cold snake and snorted. He had already caught up. Mo Changhan and Hao Lan's delay had given Chu Fengmian an opportunity to catch up. 9 levels and 1 sword. Above the tip of Chu Fengmian's sword, a sharp sword qi instantly filled the air. The dark azure sword pierced the dark water cold snake's body. The sword pierced through the dark water cold snake's body. There seemed to be countless spiritual energy churning within the dark water cold snake's body. The body of the gloom water cold snake was twisted, and blood flowed out from the wound. Chapter 33. Phew. Chu Fengmian's tensed nerves finally relaxed as he watched the dark water cold snake's body slowly sink into the water. A sense of exhaustion filled Chu Fengmian's mind. His body was still too weak at the moment. Just bursting out the sword will in the form of sword qi was already exhausting his body. He could only maintain it for a minute at most before he reached his limit. He sat cross-legged on the ground, took out a few energy-gathering pills and swallowed them in one gulp. Chu Fengmian's expression gradually relaxed as he felt the pure spiritual energy melting in his body. Dealing with the dark water cold snake had forced Chu Fengmian to use his full strength. If the dark water cold snake had not underestimated its opponent and chased after Chu Fengmian on the shore, Chu Fengmian might not have been able to deal with it. After all, the dark water cold snake was hiding in the pool. Chu Fengmian could not possibly fight the dark water cold snake in the water. That would be courting death. Are the two of you all right? Chu Fengmian looked at Mo Changhan and Hao Lan, who were resting on the ground, and asked. The two of them had just taken a direct hit from the dark water cold serpent. Even though the attack was not at full strength, their clothes were still badly damaged. "We're fine. Just a few broken ribs," Imo-chan said with a smile. Although his chest hurt, it was nothing compared to the Emperor Wan grass that could be obtained. "Let's hurry up and get the Emperor Wan grass," Imo-chan said excitedly. The Emperor Wan grass was definitely a treasure that any warrior would want to obtain. Even he was extremely excited. Imo-chan stood up and turned his head towards the direction of the island. Suddenly, his expression changed. "Wang Yi, what are you doing?" Just a moment ago, Wang Yi had not said a word, so the others thought that Wang Yi was beside them. They did not expect that Wang Yi had secretly taken advantage of the moment when no one was paying attention to run in the direction of the island. "Of course I'm going to get the Emperor Wan grass." "Do you really think that the Emperor Wan grass will be given to you?" "Naive." Wang Yi sneered when he heard Imo-chan's words. "Only a fool would divide the Emperor Wan grass equally. If I were to obtain the Emperor Wan grass alone, my aptitude would rise to a terrifying level. At that time, all of you would be defeated by me." As he spoke, Wang Yi quickened his pace and ran towards the island. "Damn it. Don't tell me you want to keep it all to yourself?" Hearing Wang Yi's words, Imo-chan's expression was both shocked and angry. Although Wang Yi had a grudge with Chu Fengmian along the way, Imo-chan didn't pay much attention to it. However, he didn't expect Wang Yi to be planning to take all the Emperor Wan grass for himself. Even though they were not close in the Martial Victory Institute, they were still good friends. However, the Emperor Wan grass had turned them against each other instantly. It wasn't just Imo-chan. Hao Lan, Yun Jialan, and Yu Zhanqing all had the same expression on their faces. None of them could believe what they were seeing. The only one who was calm was Chu Fengmian. This scene seemed to be a common occurrence. Even Chu Fengmian had expected such a scene from Wang Yi's performance just now. People like them were born into nobility, especially those who grew up in the Martial Victory Institute. They had almost never come to the outside world and grew up in an ivory tower. Naturally, they didn't know the dangers of the outside world. The value of a single Emperor Wan grass was not only enough to turn friends against each other, but also some extreme martial artists, even brothers and parents would turn against each other. There might even be a life and death grudge between them. "Let's go. Let's chase after him." Hao Lan took the lead and planned to chase after Wang Yi. Those Emperor Wan grass were obtained after painstakingly defeating the Gloomwater Cold Snake. She definitely wouldn't let Wang Yi take it all for himself. However, before Hao Lan could move, Chu Fengmian suddenly reached out and pulled her back. "Big brother Chu?" Hao Lan turned around and looked at Chu Fengmian strangely. She didn't understand Chu Fengmian's actions. However, in the next second, just as Wang Yi was about to step onto the island, a huge body suddenly jumped out of the pool. Roar! The Gloomwater Cold Snake. The Gloomwater Cold Snake that was hit by Chu Fengmian's sword didn't die. Instead, it was hiding in the pool. Now that Wang Yi stepped into the pool, it instantly jumped out. Its huge mouth was aimed at Wang Yi and swallowed him whole. Ah! There was only a scream, and then there was no more sound. With Wang Yi's strength, he didn't have the slightest ability to resist in front of the Gloomwater Cold Snake. It finally came out again. Chu Fengmian's eyes revealed some killing intent. His figure suddenly rushed towards the pool. When Chu Fengmian finished his attack, he knew that the Gloomwater Cold Snake didn't die. Chu Fengmian's attack just now was enough to destroy the Gloomwater Cold Snake's internal organs. However, the Gloomwater Cold Snake had the bloodline of a flood dragon and extremely strong vitality. Even if its waist was cut open, it wouldn't necessarily die. Wang Yi's sneaky move just now could be hidden from others, but how could it be hidden from Chu Fengmian's eyes? He didn't move on purpose because he wanted to use Wang Yi to lure the Gloomwater Cold Snake out. Sure enough, even if the Gloomwater Cold Snake was severely injured, it would still rush out if someone invaded its territory. "This time, you must die." Chu Fengmian looked at the gloom-water-cold snake and the tip of his sword flashed. Countless sword chi rushed towards the gloom-water-cold snake. The gloom-water-cold snake seemed to have sensed the danger. After swallowing Wang He, it hurriedly jumped out of the pool. But this time, Chu Fengmian wouldn't give it a chance. Countless sword chi cut through the water and smashed into the gloom-water-cold snake's body. Bam! Bam! A series of loud noises came from the pool. Following that, a large amount of blood dyed the pool purple. Soon, the gloom-water-cold snake's body floated out of the pool. Dead. Now, the gloom-water-cold snake finally died under Chu Fengmian's sword. At the same time, a corpse gradually floated out of the gloom-water-cold snake's body. Looking at the dead Wang He, Mo Chang'an's expression was somewhat helpless. But Wang He's death couldn't be blamed on others. He wanted to take the Emperor Phoenix grass for himself, but he died at the hands of the gloom-water-cold snake. It could only be said that Wang He died because of his own greed. If he hadn't been greedy, he wouldn't have ended up in the snake's mouth. Bring his body back to the academy. Chapter 34. After all, Wang He was still an inner disciple of Wuxing Academy. If he really died outside, it would not be a small matter. Bringing Wang He's corpse back to the academy was also an explanation. Okay. Hao Lan nodded, took out a storage bag, and put Wang He's corpse inside. Although he did not like Wang He, now that Wang He had died outside, it was better to bring his corpse back to the academy. Chu Fengmian did not care about what to do with Wang He's corpse. He walked to the side of the gloom-water snake's corpse and cut open its head with his sword. He took out a crystal-clear monster pill and put it into the storage bag. This gloom-water snake had inherited the bloodline of a flood dragon. Its monster pill also contained traces of dragon power, which was enough to refine many elixirs. Its price had always been very high. It would not be a problem to sell it for more than 100,000 bone-tempering pills. This gloom-water snake was killed by Chu Fengmian alone. This elixir should belong to Chu Fengmian. After putting the monster pill into the storage bag, Chu Fengmian walked towards the center of the island. In the center of the island was a huge rock. In the crevices of the rock, there were golden bird-shaped Emperor Luan grass. A total of 5, Chu Fengmian could not help but exclaim. From afar, he could only see a golden glow. Now that he looked closer, Chu Fengmian realized that there were 5 Emperor Luan grass. The Emperor Luan grass was a spiritual medicine that could only grow under the power of the ancient divine beast, the Phoenix clan. Usually, it would only appear in the birthplace of the ancient phoenix, or the birthplace or burial place of some demonic beasts with the ancient phoenix bloodline. Normally, there would only be 1 Emperor Luan grass. In some places, 2 or 3 Emperor Luan grass would be born at the same time. However, Chu Fengmian had never heard of 5 Emperor Luan grass in his previous life. It was no wonder that he was so surprised. Let's take them all first. These few Emperor Luan grass were now emitting a dazzling golden glow. This was a sign that they had completely matured. If he wanted to take them, the medicinal power would be perfect. Normally, there were some taboos when picking earth-level spiritual medicines. For example, some spiritual medicines could not be picked by hand. They needed a special jade plate. There were also some spirit herbs that would wither once they left the soil, so they had to be dug up along with the soil. However, the royal Luan grass did not have such a taboo. As long as it matured, it could be plucked. Chu Fengmian gently touched it with his hand, and a stalk of Emperor Luan grass fell into his hand. The Emperor Luan grass looked extremely similar to a real golden bird. Not long after, all 5 stalks of Emperor Luan grass had fallen into Chu Fengmian's hands. Chu Fengmian placed one of them into his storage pouch and walked towards the other 4. There are a total of 5 stalks of Emperor Luan grass. This Chu has already taken 1 stalk. The remaining 4 stalks are just nice for each of you to have 1 stalk. Chu Fengmian said as he extended his hand and handed it to everyone. Thank you, Brother Chu. Mo Chan'an glanced at Chu Fengmian and said gratefully, he took away one of the trees. Hao Lan, Yun Jialan, and Yu Zhanqing also took one each. The first stalk of Emperor Yuan grass had the greatest effect. However, the second and third stalks would also have the same effect. It was just that the effect was not as good as the first stalk. With Chu Fengmian's current strength, it would be a piece of cake for him to take away all the Emperor Yuan grass. However, Chu Fengmian did not have the intention to do so. After all, they had already agreed that he would only take one stalk. Chu Fengmian would not go back on his words. He, Chu Fengmian, had always been a man of his words. It's best for you to quickly keep the Emperor Yuan grass so as to avoid any trouble. Chu Fengmian reminded them. Although they knew the use of the Emperor Yuan grass, they definitely did not understand its value. A single stalk of Emperor Yuan grass was enough to create a peerless genius. Its value was much more precious than a peerless genius. After all, if a peerless genius could not be controlled, it would be meaningless for some clans and forces. However, with the Emperor Yuan grass, it could raise a loyal cultivator in a clan into a peerless genius. Its value was enough to make countless clans and forces go crazy. Even the current strongest force in Wuxing country, Wuxing Academy, would fight for the Emperor Yuan grass if they knew about it. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian knew about it once. At that time, a third-rate force in the continent, Jade Sword Sect, obtained a stalk of Emperor Yuan grass. This news was known by Nine Demon City, one of the 7 major sects at that time. In order to obtain the Emperor Yuan grass, Nine Demon City slaughtered thousands of disciples and tens of thousands of servants of Jade Sword Sect. In the end, they obtained the Emperor Yuan grass. If the Emperor Yuan grass appeared in the continent, it would probably cause countless bloody storms. Yes. Hearing Chu Fengmian's reminder, the 4 of them stopped looking at the Emperor Yuan grass and hurriedly kept it in their storage pouches. If the Emperor Yuan grass was discovered by others, it would be a disaster. This time, we have to thank Big Brother Chu. Yun Jialan kept the Emperor Yuan grass and thanked Chu Fengmian. Without Chu Fengmian, they would have to rely on the Academy's power to obtain the Emperor Yuan grass. Especially in that case, it would be hard to say who the Emperor Yuan grass would belong to. This time, each of them had obtained a stalk of Emperor Yuan grass, which was a great benefit. Hao Lan also said loudly, "Big Brother Chu, if you have any trouble in the future and we can help, please come to Wuxing Academy to find us. Especially that Ding Hao, if he dares to find trouble with Big Brother Chu, I will definitely beat him up." Imo Changhan also reminded. "That's right, Brother Chu. Ding Hao is narrow-minded and extremely vicious. You have to be careful. If you encounter any trouble, you can come to Wuxing Academy to find us." Okay. Chu Fengmian nodded. This time, he did not manage to kill Ding Hao, which was indeed a hidden danger. However, Chu Fengmian did not care too much. Ding Hao's strongest force was only the young hall master of one of the halls in Wuxing Academy. Given some time, Chu Fengmian would not be afraid even if he faced Wuxing Academy, let alone a young hall master. The next time Chu Fengmian met Ding Hao, it would be Ding Hao's death. "Brother Chu, we have to return to the academy. After all, we have been out for some time and something like this has happened." Imo Changhan looked at Chu Fengmian and asked, "I wonder if Brother Chu wants to leave the barbaric mountain range with us. I still have to cultivate in the barbaric mountain range for a while, so I won't be leaving with you." Chapter 35. Alright, we'll meet again if we're fated. Imo Changhan smiled when he heard Chu Fengmian's rejection. "If Brother Chu wants to join our Martial Victory Academy, you can look for us directly." Imo Changhan could also tell that Chu Fengmian did not belong to any faction. He was only a rogue cultivator. If such a genius were to join the Martial Victory Institute, it would greatly improve their influence in the Martial Victory Institute. The Martial Victory Academy was divided into countless factions and factions. They were a small group. Now, Imo Changhan wanted to rope Chu Fengmian in. "We'll see." Chu Fengmian smiled. He had no intention of joining any faction. After all, he had yet to settle the matters of the Lin mansion. Chu Fengmian still had to fulfill the wish of this body. "Brother Chu, if you're free, you can come to the Martial Victory Academy to play with us," Hao Lan said with a smile. Unlike Mo Chanhen, Hao Lan treated Chu Fengmian as a true friend and brother. This made Chu Fengmian have a good impression of Hao Lan. "All right." Chu Fengmian smiled and nodded his head. The two groups of people then split up and walked in different directions. Mo Chanhen and his group walked towards the edge of the barbaric mountain range while Chu Fengmian continued to walk towards the depths of the barbaric mountain range. After a day, Chu Fengmian finally returned to the edge of the pool. Chu Fengmian came to the barbaric mountain range to cultivate. Now that he had obtained so many beast cores and the Emperor Wang grass, he had achieved his goal. Chu Fengmian originally wanted to leave, but a sudden discovery made Chu Fengmian come up with a new plan. There was a problem with the existence of the Emperor Wang grass. The Emperor Wang grass was a spiritual medicine that grew by fusing the blood of the ancient phoenix into the soil. It contained the purest and strongest ancient spiritual energy. The Emperor Wang grass could use the ancient spiritual energy to open up the spiritual veins in a cultivator's body and strengthen their bloodline and physique. Therefore, it could create a peerless genius. Generally speaking, the places where the Emperor Wang grass grew had the blood of the ancient phoenix. Most of them were places where the blood of the ancient phoenix was left behind after a battle. Being able to grow one was already extremely difficult. Now that 5 had suddenly appeared, there must be something hidden within. It was even possible that this pool was where the ancient phoenix had fallen. If this was really the place where the ancient phoenix fell, it would be a huge treasure. The ancient phoenix would never rest for thousands of years. If one could obtain some of its bones, it would be extremely useful. That was why Chu Fengmian didn't leave right away. Instead, he chose to return to the pool to investigate. There's something wrong with this pool. Chu Fengmian walked to the edge of the pool and bent down to touch the water. The water in the pool was bone-chillingly cold. It was probably colder than ice, but it did not freeze into ice. It could only be due to some powerful force that could create such a phenomenon. This pool is so deep that I can't see the bottom. There must be something hidden in it. Chu Fengmian thought to himself. All these intents were pointing to the bottom of the pool. "Let's go." Chu Fengmian looked around and saw that there was no one around. Then, he took a big stride and jumped into the pool. The cold pool water instantly made Chu Fengmian shiver. The pool water was really too cold. Chu Fengmian had already stepped into the 8th level of the bone-tempering realm and his body had become much stronger. However, Chu Fengmian was still shivering in the water. Chu Fengmian's mind moved. He distributed the spiritual energy in his body to every part of his body. As a result, Chu Fengmian felt that his body had become much warmer. Then, he stabilized his body and swam towards the bottom of the pool. The pool water was already extremely cold. The further Chu Fengmian swam, the colder the pool water became. This caused the spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's body to be consumed rapidly. At this rate, he was afraid that he would only be able to hold on for about a minute before he was completely exhausted. Ancient aura. The moment Chu Fengmian dived into the depths of the pool, his eyes suddenly widened. At the bottom of the pool, Chu Fengmian felt a weak spiritual energy. This spiritual energy was an extremely ancient and powerful spiritual energy. There really is something hidden under this pool. Chu Fengmian thought excitedly. If he could obtain some of the treasures of the ancient phoenix, Chu Fengmian would soar to the sky. However, Chu Fengmian's spiritual energy was about to be completely exhausted. No, I'm so close. I have to find out what it is. Chu Fengmian said angrily in his heart. The treasures were already within reach. How could Chu Fengmian give up now? Oh, right. Suddenly, Chu Fengmian thought of something. He took out a jade bottle from his storage bag and opened it. Chu Fengmian held a cyan elixir tightly in his hand. The Dew elixir. Before leaving the Lin mansion, the third elder specially gave Chu Fengmian this elixir. Chu Fengmian had been cultivating in the barbaric mountain range all this time and did not have time to refine it. Now, if he wanted to continue diving and replenish his spiritual energy, this dew elixir was the best way. I don't care. I can only fight. Chu Fengmian's eyes turned cold. He put the dew elixir into his mouth. Refining elixirs was a task that required full concentration. It had to be done in a quiet place. Now that Chu Fengmian was in the depths of the pool, he had to consume spiritual energy at every moment to resist the coldness of the pool water. Under such circumstances, he had to forcibly refine the dew elixir. This was an extremely dangerous thing to do. Even Chu Fengmian was not confident. However, this time, Chu Fengmian had no choice. In a spurt of energy, he had to explore this pool to the end. As soon as the dew elixir entered his mouth, a burst of pure spiritual energy erupted. It relieved Chu Fengmian a lot of pressure. However, Chu Fengmian did not dare to relax. This relief was only temporary. When the dew elixir's efficacy was completely exhausted, Chu Fengmian's situation would be even more dangerous. He had to take advantage of this time to go to the bottom of the pool. At the bottom of the pool, there was almost no sunlight. Chu Fengmian could only rely on his spiritual energy to barely see the surroundings. This place seems to be a gate? Chu Fengmian looked at the pool beside him. There was a huge rock on top of it. His eyes revealed a strange expression. There was a door on the boulder. Who built a cave abode at the bottom of the pond? Chu Fengmian's expression changed slightly. He swam towards the huge rock. Only when he got close did Chu Fengmian see the gate clearly. Chapter 36. This spiritual sword was carved in the center of the stone door. Although it was only a sculpture, it was enough to let people see the sharpness of this spiritual sword at a glance. It was as if everything in the world was nothing in front of this sword. Although it was only the shape of the sculpture, one could feel such a terrifying sword edge and sword intent. The strength of the person who carved it was absolutely terrifying to the extreme. Extreme sword seal? When Chu Fengmian saw the spiritual sword carved on the stone door, the expression on his face could almost be described as shock. He looked at it again and finally confirmed that it was a spiritual sword carved on the stone door. Extreme sword seal, it's actually under the pool? Chu Fengmian frowned. Everything that appeared in front of him made him somewhat unable to understand. However, now was not the time for Chu Fengmian to continue thinking. The medicinal strength of that jade dew pill in his mouth was already about to be exhausted. Since it's the extreme sword seal, then I should be able to do it. Chu Fengmian secretly thought in his heart. From Chu Fengmian's body, a powerful sword intent suddenly burst out. The moment this sword intent burst out from Chu Fengmian's body, the spiritual sword carved on the stone door unexpectedly also burst out a shocking sword intent. These two sword intents were actually very similar. The two sword intents could only be seen blending with each other. From the stone door, a crack was opened with a bang. Seeing this scene, Chu Fengmian hurriedly moved his body and rushed into the stone door. Then the stone door hurriedly closed, blocking the pool outside. Only a small part of it was left behind. Chu Fengmian entered and finally slowly breathed a sigh of relief. In the depths of the pool, Chu Fengmian was almost exhausted. Chu Fengmian sat on the ground and took out a jade bottle from the storage bag. He poured out a few energy-gathering pills and swallowed them. As his spiritual power gradually recovered, Chu Fengmian's body also emitted a wave of heat, drying all the clothes on his body. Suddenly, he became much more refreshed. Phew, fortunately, I kept most of the sword intent. Otherwise, I almost couldn't even open this extreme sword seal. Chu Fengmian muttered to himself in a low voice. If he couldn't even open this extreme sword seal today, it would really be a joke. It was like a person who couldn't enter his own home. The extreme sword seal was actually a restriction created by Chu Fengmian's master, the master of sword principle. It required an extremely high level of sword intent to be able to open it. Furthermore, there had to be a way to open it. the Lord of the Sword Dao had once taught his disciples how to set up and open the Extreme Dao Sword Seal. Naturally, Chu Fengmian remembered it. It could be said that the Extreme Path Sword mark was indeed like Chu Fengmian's home. However, why would this Extreme Dao Sword Seal appear in the barbaric mountain range? Chu Fengmian looked around with a hint of confusion in his mind. Only the Lord of the Sword Dao, as well as Chu Fengmian's senior brothers and sisters, were capable of setting up such a seal. However, he still couldn't remember who had come to the desolate mountain range. The victorious martial nation was nothing more than a remote nation. In the past, Chu Fengmian wouldn't have chosen to come to such a small place. The master of the Sword Dao and his senior brothers and sisters wouldn't have come either. However, this Extreme Dao Sword Seal couldn't be fake. At the very least, the person who left this cave residence was definitely related to Chu Fengmian. After Chu Fengmian's spiritual power recovered, he stood up, took out the black azure sword, and walked into the depths of the cave residence little by little. Although there were restrictions at the entrance of an ordinary cave residence, it was inevitable that some warriors would choose to set up some traps in the depths of the cave residence. Chu Fengmian's senior brothers and sisters in his previous life were all peerless geniuses and famous super experts on the continent. Even if they casually set up a trap, it would be fatal to Chu Fengmian. He had to be on guard. Along the way, Chu Fengmian was extremely cautious and didn't encounter any traps. This cave residence wasn't deep. It looked like it was only a few dozen meters long before reaching the end. There was a wide cave at the end. It was at least 1,000 meters long. In the center of the cave, a huge skeleton was reflected in Chu Fengmian's eyes. That skeleton looked like a giant bird, and it was lying in the center of the cave all by itself, deep in sleep. Among them, the white bones were all showing a blue color. The skeleton had fallen for many years. Now, at a glance, it was still as bright as new. The majesty contained in it made Chu Fengmian's eyes serious, and he didn't dare to underestimate it. When the skeleton was alive, it was a real almighty expert. The skeleton was immortal for 10,000 years and was as bright as new. Even if it had fallen for 10,000 years, if Chu Fengmian showed any disrespect, it would be extremely dangerous. It's been 10,000 years. In these 10,000 years, someone could break the Extreme Dao Sword Seal and enter the cave residence. An old voice suddenly rang out. Countless green-blue flames suddenly appeared in the cave and lit up the cave with a green-blue color. Although the voice was extremely weak, it made people think of the majesty of the owner of the voice. Whoosh! Countless flames overlapped in front of Chu Fengmian, and the appearance of an old man with blue eyebrows slowly appeared. The old man's face was full of wrinkles, but it seemed that there was endless fighting spirit in his every move, as if he was a war god. Little guy, how did you break this Extreme Dao Sword Seal? After 10,000 years, I'm afraid that no one can break this Extreme Dao Sword Seal. Qingwan, you're Qingwan? When Chu Fengmian saw the old man's appearance, a familiar figure suddenly appeared in his mind, causing him to blurt out. In Chu Fengmian's voice, there was not only surprise, but also a trace of nostalgia. He didn't expect that after 10,000 years, he would actually meet an old friend. Little guy, you know me? Qingwan's face revealed a somewhat strange expression. After 10,000 years, not only did someone break the Extreme Dao Sword Seal, but they also recognized him. Chu Fengmian's expression and thoughts couldn't be faked. In front of an expert like him, if Chu Fengmian's words were a lie, it was enough to tell at a glance. However, there was only excitement and a kind of nostalgia in Chu Fengmian's expression, as if he had met an old friend. As expected, no one can recognize me after seeing this appearance. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh. After 10,000 years, the world had changed, and the past was like clouds. Now that he had changed his body, even an old friend couldn't recognize him. Chu Fengmian calmed his emotions and said calmly. Chapter 37. You can't have forgotten this matter, right? Chu Fengmian's words seemed to have recalled 10,000 years ago. At that time, Chu Fengmian had already stepped into the peak of Sword Dao. Even the master of Sword Dao was inferior to Chu Fengmian's sword intent. However, no matter how strong Chu Fengmian's sword intent was, he had no spiritual power. As a result, Chu Fengmian had nothing to do and wandered around the heaven-ceasing peak. As for Jianwang, he came because of his reputation and wanted to be apprenticed to the master of Sword Dao. The two met under the heaven-ceasing peak and wanted to compete in sword intent. If Chu Fengmian won, Jianwang would agree to be his mount for a month. If Chu Fengmian lost, he would bring Jianwang to see the master of Sword Dao. At that time, Jianwang was in high spirits and felt that he couldn't lose to a trash who didn't even have a spiritual vein. However, Chu Fengmian still won in the end. Thus, he wandered around the continent with Jianwang for a month. Other than Chu Fengmian, perhaps only Jianwang knew about this matter. After all, it wasn't a glorious thing for a descendant of a divine beast to be used as a mount. Chu Fengmian didn't mention this matter, and Jianwang wouldn't take the initiative to say it. Sword duel under the heaven-ceasing peak? Jianwang's eyes revealed a strange look. After hearing the latter part, there was only shock left on his face. You're Chu Jianbai? The kid who won against me back then? If it's not me, would anyone else know about this matter? Chu Fengmian looked at Jianwang and sighed. However, the former Chu Jianbai has already fallen under the heaven-ceasing peak. The current me is called Chu Fengmian. Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Jianwang suddenly realized that the current Chu Fengmian was not similar to the Chu Jianbai in his memory. The only thing he had was the sharp sword intent on his body. A dream of 10,000 years. I don't know if it's good or bad. The world has changed. My old friends are all gone, leaving me alone. Chu Fengmian sighed. How could he not want to die with his master, his senior brothers and senior sisters? Now, only Chu Fengmian was left in the world. Seeing Jianwang again, Chu Fengmian was also incomparably happy. After all, he was once a good friend, and he couldn't help but recall the past of 10,000 years. Reincarnation, it seems like you have reincarnated. Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian and murmured. Reincarnation is an illusory concept to begin with. Even your master, the Lord of the Sword Dao, was unable to touch upon the Dao of reincarnation. But even if he is reincarnated, it is impossible for him to have memories. Reincarnating with memories is unheard of in this world. Jianwang said slowly. He himself was an invincible expert, but in his opinion, reincarnation was incomparably illusory. If he hadn't seen Chu Fengmian again, he wouldn't have believed it. The fate of heaven and earth is truly mysterious. It's not something that can be comprehended by mere mortals. Jianwang sighed. I never would have thought that you would be the only one who survived out of the countless disciples of the former Sword Dao Master. The Sword Dao Lord had countless geniuses among his disciples. Many of Chu Fengmian's senior brothers and sisters were super experts whose names shook the continent. However, all of them fell under the pursuit of the 7 great sections. On the contrary, Chu Fengmian, the youngest disciple, didn't have a spirit vein. Instead, he was reincarnated. This made people sigh. Jianwang, how did you fall as well? Chu Fengmian looked at Jianwang in surprise. Chu Fengmian was well aware of Jianwang's strength. He was strong enough to be ranked at the top of the continent. Among Chu Fengmian's senior brothers, there were no more than 3 who could defeat Jianwang. Especially Jianwang, who had the bloodline of the Phoenix clan, an ancient divine beast. He had a long lifespan. Although 10,000 years was a long time, it wasn't enough for him to fall. But now, it seemed that Jianwang had also fallen. Now, he was just a shadow condensed by a wisp of spiritual power left behind. Of course, it's the people of the 7 great sections. Jianwang's eyes were filled with boundless resentment. He, who was invincible, was forced into a desperate situation and died. Naturally, his resentment was boundless. The people of the 7 great sects also found me among the countless disciples who were pursuing the Sword Dao Lord. They wanted me to hand over the countless techniques and sword techniques left behind by the former Sword Dao Lord. Jianwang said coldly. Although Jianwang wasn't the disciple of the Sword Dao Lord, he had followed the Sword Dao Lord for a long time. Naturally, he knew some of the techniques and sword techniques left behind by the Sword Dao Lord. It seemed that after the people of the 7 great sects realized that they couldn't get those techniques and sword techniques from Chu Fengmian's senior brothers and sisters, they set their sights on Jianwang. Jianwang said sternly, "But I've already burned those ancient swordsmanship books. Those people of the 7 great sects will have to pay a price if they want to kill me. In the end, if it wasn't for the monster in 9 Demon City, I might not have fallen. But that monster was also killed by me." The monster in 9 Demon City? Is it the Bloodlust Sword Demon? In 9 Demon City, he was the only one who could be called a monster. Now, Chu Fengmian suddenly saw that there was a long sword under the huge skeleton. This long sword was close to 2 meters long. There were purple veins on the sword. These purple veins were extremely demonic. Even if it had been sealed for 10,000 years, it was enough to see the demonic aura within. The Bloodlust Sword? Your body is actually suppressing this demonic sword? Chu Fengmian was shocked. The Bloodlust Demon Sword was a spiritual weapon that was once famous in the continent. It could be said that this Bloodlust Demon Sword was even stronger than a heaven-rank spiritual weapon in terms of grade. However, his reputation was not only spread because of his strength, but also because of the terror of the Bloodlust Demon Sword. Every owner of the Bloodlust Demon Sword would eventually be corrupted by the Bloodlust Demon Sword and become a sword demon that only knew how to fight. It was no wonder that there were no more rumors about the Bloodlust Demon Sword in the present time. From the looks of it, the blood-slaying demon sword had been suppressed in the mountain cave by the Azure Luan's body for 10,000 years. That's right. My soul has always existed to suppress this Bloodlust Demon Sword. Jianwang looked at the Bloodlust Demon Sword and said, "If I sit by and do nothing, this sword will definitely cause a storm of blood when it appears on the continent again. So, I've waited for 10,000 years for such a fated person to come to this cave and hand this Bloodlust Demon Sword to him. Now, I didn't expect to meet you," Jianwang said. His voice was already extremely weak. It seemed that his soul could not hold on for much longer. Chapter 38. You're saying that you want to give this bloodbath demon sword to me? Chu Fengmian looked at Jianwang and said with some surprise. This bloodbath demon sword was a true demon sword. No matter who its master was, they would be affected by it and fall into madness. But now, it seemed that Jianwang wanted to give this bloodbath demon sword to Chu Fengmian and let him take it out. That's right. Jianwang nodded and looked at the bloodbath demon sword. This demon sword's power is extremely powerful. In fact, whether a weapon is good or evil is not determined by itself, but by its master. Even if it's a demon sword, as long as one can control it well, it will be an excellent aid. Jianwang slowly said. In fact, those who became sword demons were mostly immersed in the power of this bloodbath demon sword, causing it to become their master. That's why they fell into madness. But if they're clear-headed, this bloodbath demon sword is worthy of being a peerless weapon. Hearing Jianwang's words, Chu Fengmian nodded in agreement. That's right. There was no distinction between good and evil in a weapon. Their good and evil depended on the person controlling the weapon. If a benevolent weapon was obtained by a homicidal maniac, it would also be stained with blood. On the contrary, if a kind person obtained this bloodbath demon sword, they would only view it as a powerful weapon. I don't have much time left. If this continues, sooner or later, I won't have the power to suppress this bloodbath demon sword. At that time, if this bloodbath demon sword appears outside and is obtained by others, it will easily cause a bloody storm. Rather than that, why don't I give this bloodbath demon sword to you? Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian and said with deep meaning. If I'm not wrong, the current you can already cultivate. Yes. Chu Fengmian replied. After being reborn, the current Chu Fengmian could finally cultivate. In the future, you might even surpass your master. Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian and said. This was not flattery, but something that the master of the sword Dao had once said. Chu Fengmian's sword will was unparalleled in the world. His understanding of the sword even surpassed that of the Lord of the Sword Dao. If Chu Fengmian could really cultivate it, his future achievements would surpass that of the Lord of the Sword Dao. Take it. You're the only one who can control this demonic sword. Qingyuan waved her hand, and the demon sword flew out with a bang, landing in Chu Fengmian's hand. As soon as the bloodlust demon sword entered his hand, Chu Fengmian felt a sense of familiarity. It was as if the bloodlust demon sword was tailor-made for him. As expected of a true divine weapon. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but praise. True divine weapons didn't require great strength to be able to control them. For example, the bloodlust demon sword could be picked up and used by even an ordinary person. Because of this, the bloodbath demon sword was extremely terrifying. Even if an ordinary person obtained the bloodbath demon sword, they could become a sword demon that could shake the entire continent. The moment it entered his hand, Chu Fengmian felt a tyrannical feeling fill Chu Fengmian's mind. Even Chu Fengmian was almost affected. It's indeed a demonic sword. It's actually enough to disturb its master's mind. Chu Fengmian said in a low voice. Fortunately, Chu Fengmian's willpower was firm. As a person of 2 lives, his willpower was probably not inferior to those peak experts in the world. Although the influence of this demonic sword was terrifying, it had no effect on the current Chu Fengmian. Instead, it was enough to make Chu Fengmian even more determined. Sure enough, you are the only one capable of subduing this demon sword. Qingyuan praised when she saw that Chu Fengmian's aura didn't fluctuate in the slightest. If it were an ordinary person, the moment they obtained the bloodlust demon sword, they would probably be corroded by the consciousness of the bloodlust demon sword and become a sword demon that only knew how to kill. But the current Chu Fengmian wasn't affected in the slightest. I've engraved 3 layers of seals on this demonic sword. Only when your strength is enough can you unlock the seals. Only then will all the power of this demonic sword erupt. Qingyuan said. Unless it's absolutely necessary, don't rashly unlock the seals. Your current realm is really too low. If you unlock all the seals of this bloodlust demon sword all at once, causing all its power to erupt, I'm afraid you won't be able to resist the corrosion of its consciousness. Only when your realm is enough can you unlock the seals. At that time, it'll also be the time when you truly control this bloodlust demon sword. Chu Fengmian nodded. He naturally knew that this demonic sword that shook the continent naturally wouldn't have such weak power. At least Chu Fengmian knew that as long as an ordinary person held this bloodlust demon sword, it would be enough to easily kill Divine Sea Realm, Wind Controlling Realm, and even Divine Power Realm warriors. It would be easy. Now, this seal was also helping Chu Fengmian control this demonic sword. Oh right, the sword master once gave me a medicinal pill at the last moment and told me to give it to you. However, at that time, I was already being chased by the people of the 7 great sects, so I naturally didn't have the chance to find you. Today, it's enough for me to complete this matter before the last moment. Qingyuan's figure began to slowly thin out. This was a sign that his spiritual power was about to be exhausted. Once it was completely exhausted, Qingyuan's soul would also dissipate. For you. Qingyuan slowly took out a jade box in his hand. This jade box was carved out of white jade. The moment Chu Fengmian took it and opened the jade box, he was almost enveloped by a pure medicinal power. This is the 9 transformation heaven seizing pill? Chu Fengmian opened the jade box and saw the medicinal pill quietly placed inside. His mouth was almost wide open. The 9 transformation heaven seizing pill was a top-grade heaven-level medicinal pill. It was said to be a divine pill that could allow a cripple with broken spiritual veins to condense new spiritual veins in one fell swoop. Master, you actually still remember my body at the last moment. Chu Fengmian's voice was somewhat choked. At the last moment, the sword master had already sensed the threat from the 7 great sects, but at this time, he still remembered Chu Fengmian's body. In his previous life, Chu Fengmian was an orphan who had never even seen his own parents. He was single-handedly raised by the sword master. Since taking Chu Fengmian as his disciple, the sword master didn't take in any other disciples. Even Jianwang was just an ordinary person who followed the sword master. Chapter 39. Refine it. I will also use the last of my strength to help you refine it. Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian and said in an extremely weak voice. I don't have much time left. All right. Chu Fengmian picked up the 9 transformation heaven seizing pill and put it into his mouth. This 9 transformation heaven seizing pill was a top-grade heaven-level pill. Even Chu Fengmian in his previous life had never refined such a grade of pill. The moment this 9 transformation heaven seizing pill entered his mouth, the little bit of medicinal power that just erupted made Chu Fengmian's body suddenly expand. It was as if the medicinal power was too great and wanted to break through Chu Fengmian's body. Sword! Chu Fengmian frowned and roared. On Chu Fengmian's body, a huge sword intent burst out. This sword intent turned into a giant python that swallowed the sky and began to devour the spiritual power that overflowed from Chu Fengmian's body to help Chu Fengmian refine this 9 transformation heaven seizing pill. Boom! In an instant, the 5th spiritual vein on Chu Fengmian's arm was broken. At the same time, not only the 5th, 6th, and 7th spiritual veins began to be filled with spiritual power. In the blink of an eye, Chu Fengmian's 7 spiritual veins were forcibly broken in the battle of his body. This was just the beginning. Next, the 9 transformation heaven seizing pill in Chu Fengmian's mouth was constantly pounding Chu Fengmian's body with its huge medicinal power in an instant. Not only Chu Fengmian's arm, but another spiritual vein on Chu Fengmian's back was opened. The 8th spiritual vein. In the memory of Chu Fengmian's body, among the geniuses of the entire Lin family, only one person had broken through to the 7th spiritual vein. As for those above the 7th spiritual vein, he did not know. But now, the 8th spiritual vein on Chu Fengmian's body had already broken through. Continue to open it. The medicinal power of this 9 transformation heaven seizing pill is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for you. If you can open more spiritual veins, you will be more powerful in the future. Avenge your master. Jianwang shouted angrily from the side. Although 8 spiritual veins was already considered the peak in Wuxing country, compared to the geniuses of the 7 major sects, it was simply like trash. Chu Fengmian's opponents were the 7 major sections. How could this bit of spiritual vein satisfy Chu Fengmian? That's right. Revenge. Chu Fengmian's originally calm heart was once again ignited. He had to have strength. Only with strength would he be able to kill his way into the 7 great sects in the future and avenge his master and his senior brothers and sisters. Endless transformations, open for me. Chu Fengmian roared. Countless sword wills condensed into sky-devouring pythons within Chu Fengmian's body, devouring the medicinal efficacy of the 9 transformation heaven seizing pill. This time, there were as many as 7 heaven-devouring pythons in one go. At every moment, he was devouring the medicinal power within to nourish Chu Fengmian's body. Boom! 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 Within an hour, Chu Fengmian had already opened 13 spiritual veins in his body. The frigid water on Chu Fengmian's body had already soaked through his clothes. Every inch of his flesh was now twisted in pain. During the cultivation of the broken bone rebirth technique, every time he condensed a spiritual vein, he had to break all the spiritual veins in his body and condense them again. Within a short hour, the spiritual veins in Chu Fengmian's body had already been broken and regenerated 9 times. As soon as the pain of breaking and regenerating ended, it once again filled Chu Fengmian's body. However, there was no change in Chu Fengmian's eyes. This kind of pain seemed to have no fear for Chu Fengmian. There was even some excitement in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Only strength could support Chu Fengmian's revenge. How could Chu Fengmian not be excited? Every bit of pain he suffered now would be his strength in the future. He now wished that the pain would be more intense, which would be enough for Chu Fengmian to condense more spiritual veins. Come on, let's see how effective this 9 transformation heaven seizing pill is today. Chu Fengmian roared angrily and took the initiative to start devouring the medicinal power of the 9 transformation heaven seizing pill. If Chu Fengmian was said to be carefully devouring the medicinal power of the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill bit by bit, then the current Chu Fengmian had already transformed into a greedy giant snake and started to take the initiative to devour the medicinal power of the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill. Countless sweat flowed down Chu Fengmian's body. His heart was not afraid of pain, but this physical pain was unavoidable. However, even if it was an enormous pain, Chu Fengmian did not make any sound. Even if his spiritual veins were broken, his expression was still calm and determined. 2 hours. 2 hours had already passed. Even Jianwang, who was at the side, kept looking at Chu Fengmian. She wanted to see when Chu Fengmian would end. Currently, Chu Fengmian's body had already opened a total of 20 spiritual veins. This number was already enough to be compared with the geniuses of some of the truly large sections. However, Chu Fengmian still did not have the slightest sign of ending. Another 4 hours passed. The spiritual veins in Chu Fengmian's body were still constantly opening. This made Jianwang somewhat in disbelief. Although this 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill was enough to be called the most tyrannical medicinal pill in the world, being able to open 20 spiritual veins was already enough to be called world-shocking. But now, looking at Chu Fengmian's appearance, the spiritual veins in his body were already beginning to charge towards 30. The 35th. Jianwang already did not know how long Chu Fengmian had been opening. She was just counting time and time again, counting the spiritual veins that were open on Chu Fengmian's body every time. It was already the 35th. This number, perhaps some of Chu Fengmian's senior brothers and sisters had already not reached it. Using the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill to open up spiritual veins actually relied on a willpower. How long this willpower could persist was how much medicinal power of the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill could be devoured. Once the willpower could not withstand it, this 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill would naturally lose its effect. The medicinal power within would also lose its effect and would be released. All along, there had been many warriors who could hold on to open 20 spiritual veins. However, those who could open 25 spiritual veins and above were already enough to be said to have a firm will. 30 spiritual veins could already be said to be a peerless genius. And the 35 spiritual veins that Chu Fengmian had opened up were extremely rare in the entire continent. It's still opening. Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian as if she was looking at a monster. Chapter 40. 35 spiritual meridians was not the limit. Boom! 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 Above Chu Fengmian's body, several spiritual energies violently erupted, which caused Chu Fengmian's spiritual energies to expand. Another 3 spiritual meridians were opened. Seize heaven's secrets, cast divine meridians. Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian as if she was looking at a monster. Could it be that the legend is true? Seize heaven's secrets, cast divine meridians. This was the description of the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill in ancient times. This seize heaven's secrets was to seize the medicinal power of the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill. This 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill was refined from countless spiritual herbs that contained the purest spiritual energies in the world. The medicinal energy contained within was extremely terrifying. How much of it one could absorb would determine how high a cultivator's potential would reach in the future. The second sentence, cast divine meridians, was a rumor. According to legend, there were a total of 49 spiritual meridians. Ordinary martial artists could only open 2 of them. 3 was the limit. Only some geniuses could open more than 7 spiritual meridians. For example, among the disciples of some large sects, such as the disciples of the 7 major sects, it was not rare to see geniuses who could open 10 or 20 spiritual meridians using various elixirs and acquired methods. However, those who could open more than 30 spiritual meridians were extremely rare. They were the real leaders among the 7 major sections. Legend had it that those who could open all 49 spiritual meridians in the body were the legendary divine meridians. However, this divine meridians was almost like an illusory legend. There were only records, but no one had truly achieved it. Chu Fengmian's former master, the master of Sword Dao, who was known as the strongest person in the world, had opened a total of 48 spiritual meridians. However, this had already reached the limit. Therefore, this also created a saying that martial artists actually only had 48 spiritual meridians. The true 49th spiritual meridians was just a lie. After all, the former master of Sword Dao was already ranked at the peak of strength. Therefore, this saying was also widely known. The divine meridians were mostly just some illusory talk. No one had ever taken it seriously. However, seeing Chu Fengmian's appearance today, Jianwang suddenly thought of this sentence. Before Jianwang could speak again, another wave of spiritual energy fluctuation came from Chu Fengmian's side. 40 spiritual meridians. Currently, Chu Fengmian's body had opened up a total of 40 spiritual meridians. This was already an astonishing figure. Among all the martial artists who took the 9 Revolutions heaven-seizing pill, there had never been anyone who truly reached this level. Swallowing the medicinal strength of the 9 Revolutions heaven-seizing pill was not as simple as it seemed. The more they swallowed, the greater the burden on their bodies, and what followed was unforgettable pain. Many martial artists swallowed this 9 Revolutions heaven-seizing pill. Because of the pain, they forcibly fainted. It was not that their minds were not firm, but that their bodies were unable to bear it. However, what Chu Fengmian was currently cultivating was the broken bone rebirth art. In addition to the double pain of the 9 Revolution heaven-seizing pill, Chu Fengmian was actually able to open up as many as 40 spirit veins. Monster, truly a monster. In his previous life, Chu Jianbai stood at the pinnacle of the Sword Dao without any spiritual energy. In this life, if he opens his divine vein, I'm afraid the world will change. Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian and whispered to herself. However, it was also true. In this world, only Chu Fengmian could die and reincarnate with this memory. Having lived 2 lives, it also created Chu Fengmian's incomparable willpower of soul, allowing him to bear such pain. 41st. 42nd. Time passed by minute, second by second. Chu Fengmian's breakthrough speed also slowed down a lot. Breaking through each spirit vein was countless times more difficult than the previous one. The current Chu Fengmian did not know how long he had stayed in this cave. The clothes on Chu Fengmian's body were also dried time and time again, soaked by the cold water again and again. He sat in the cave and did not move at all. In Chu Fengmian's mind, there was only the thought of continuously swallowing the spiritual energy of the 9 Revolutions heaven-seizing pill to open up spirit veins. 48th. After an unknown amount of time, spiritual energy once again burst out from Chu Fengmian's body. 48th spirit vein. This was already the limit of martial artists. It was the limit that countless monsters and genius martial artists in history could reach. Even Chu Fengmian's master, the master of the Sword Dao, stopped at this step. Do the legendary divine veins really exist? Let me see for myself. Jianwang secretly whispered to himself. His eyes were full of expectation. He also wanted to see with his own eyes whether the legendary divine vein could be born. Bang! Behind Chu Fengmian, countless spirit veins appeared one by one. Through Chu Fengmian's clothes, one could clearly see that Chu Fengmian's back was now covered with spirit veins. These spirit veins seemed to form a formation map, but the center of this formation map was pitch black. It seemed that only a little bit was needed to complete it. The last spirit vein, the 49th spirit vein, actually exists. When Jianwang saw this scene, he also knew that this last point was the last spirit vein on the martial artist's body, the 49th spirit vein. The existence of this spirit vein was not fake, but whether it could be broken through, Jianwang was not sure. After all, countless geniuses had not broken through this point. Was it possible for the current Chu Fengmian? Break for me! Chu Fengmian roared crazily. The 9 Revolution heaven-seizing pill in his mouth had been completely devoured. All of the medicinal power of the 9 Revolution heaven-seizing pill had been devoured by Chu Fengmian. Now, he also understood that this was the last barrier. Bang! 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 On Chu Fengmian's body and arms, blue veins were exposed, and cracks suddenly burst open. On Chu Fengmian's skin, there were cracks, and countless blood flowed out. This was the result of forcefully breaking through the spirit vein. If he kept trying and failed, he might even be directly killed by the power of the backlash. In history, there were also countless martial artists who were killed by the backlash when they tried to break through the spirit vein. Chu Fengmian, if you can't do it, don't force yourself anymore. Jianwang shouted anxiously. He did not want to see Chu Fengmian, who had painstakingly broken through 48 spirit veins, die at the last breakthrough. No! I want to break through. Chu Fengmian said sternly. He wanted to break through. In order to take revenge, in order to defeat the 7 major sects, he had to break through. Chapter 41. Isn't it just the last spiritual vein? Open for me. Countless ferocious sword intents erupted around Chu Fengmian's body. This sword intent was almost all of Chu Fengmian's comprehension in his previous life. The sword intents were all added to Chu Fengmian's body, increasing Chu Fengmian's strength for the final impact. Boom! With one impact, Chu Fengmian's body began to tremble crazily. His flesh and blood were trembling as if he couldn't hold on any longer. However, Chu Fengmian's will remained unchanged. Create the divine vein. The legendary divine vein, Chu Fengmian was going to create it for them to see. Open! 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 The 3 consecutive words represented Chu Fengmian's 3 attacks on the last spiritual vein. The spiritual power on his body had expanded to the extreme, causing Chu Fengmian's body to become a huge ball. The spiritual power of the 48 spiritual veins had been completely activated by Chu Fengmian. Today, he had to open the last spiritual vein. Chu Fengmian, give up first. If this continues, your body won't be able to hold on. You have already opened 48 spiritual veins. In the future, there will be plenty of time to break through the last one and create the divine vein. Jianwang hurriedly advised from the side. He didn't dare to imagine Chu Fengmian dying in front of him now. Chu Fengmian's current behavior was simply walking on a tightrope. If he failed to break through and mobilized so much spiritual power, with Chu Fengmian's current body, Chu Fengmian would probably explode and die in an instant. No! Chu Fengmian shook his head. If he gave up this time, he would never be able to create the divine vein. Many mysteries, forging the divine vein. Chu Fengmian had heard this sentence before, but at that time, Chu Fengmian only thought that it was made up to brag about the effect of the 9 transformation heaven-seizing pill. But now, at this last step, Chu Fengmian was breaking through. If he wanted to forge the divine vein, he had to do it in one go. He had to use this opportunity to succeed in one go. Otherwise, no matter how many opportunities he looked for in the future, it would be meaningless. Therefore, he must not give up this time. Finally, open for me. As soon as Chu Fengmian roared, a boundless amount of spiritual energy erupted from Chu Fengmian. The spirit veins in Chu Fengmian's body dimmed under the pressure of the spiritual power. Failed? Jianwang hurried forward, and her expression changed when she saw this scene. Chu Fengmian's spirit veins had all dimmed. Did that mean that Chu Fengmian had failed? No. Chu Fengmian slowly stood up. Indeed, not a single spiritual vein could be seen on Chu Fengmian's body. However, a pure spiritual energy could be clearly felt from Chu Fengmian's body. This spiritual energy was much purer than the most powerful spiritual energy in the world, as if it did not belong to this world. Is this the divine vein? Chu Fengmian's mind flickered, and a series of spirit veins appeared behind him. These spirit veins perfectly reflected a diagram. This image seemed to reflect the continent. 9 zones. This is the 9 zones. When Jianwang saw this pattern, she recognized it at a glance. This pattern was the appearance of the 9 zones. In the world, there were a total of 9 zones. These 9 zones represented everything in this world. She did not expect that all 49 spirit veins in this person's body would reflect the appearance of the 9 zones. So this person's spirit veins actually represent the 9 zones? Jianwang looked at Chu Fengmian and sighed. It's enough to be able to see the divine vein at the last moment. As soon as her voice fell, Jianwang's figure gradually dissipated and turned into a cloud of dust. Jianwang had been persisting because she wanted to see the final result. Now that Chu Fengmian's divine vein had been condensed, his spiritual energy was finally exhausted, and his soul dissipated. Condensing the divine vein is indeed different from ordinary spirit veins. Chu Fengmian whispered to himself. The moment Chu Fengmian condensed the divine vein, he felt that it was completely different from the previous spirit veins. In the past, even if Chu Fengmian used a tiny bit of spiritual energy, it would consume the spiritual energy in Chu Fengmian's body. However, after condensing the divine vein, Chu Fengmian felt that the spiritual energy in his body seemed to be endless. No matter how much it was consumed, he didn't feel anything. Nonsense, if the spirit veins were the same as the divine vein, then why would it be called a divine vein? Just call it a spirit vein. In his mind, someone seemed to have heard Chu Fengmian's words and suddenly roared at Chu Fengmian. Who is it? Is there someone? Chu Fengmian suddenly became nervous and looked around. In this cave, there should only be Chu Fengmian and Jianwang. Now that Jianwang's soul had dissipated, there shouldn't be anyone else. But where did this voice come from? Look at the sword in your hand. The voice sounded again, and there was even impatience in its tone. Sword? Chu Fengmian lowered his head, looked at his hand, and suddenly said. You are the Bloodslayer demon sword? What Bloodslayer demon sword? Who gave it a lousy name? I am the Star Sword. The #1 sword in the world. The voice said with some anger. Those people couldn't control the power of the sword and were affected by the sword and turned into sword demons. Instead, they said that I am a demon sword. Simply stupid. The one who spoke now was actually a sword. Chu Fengmian looked at the Bloodslayer demon sword. No, it should be called the Star Sword. He was so surprised that he couldn't speak. He had never seen a sword that could talk before. Furthermore, it sounded like it had quite a strong tone. The #1 sword in the world. Kid, didn't you want to know the difference between the divine vein and the spiritual vein? I will tell you now. Xing Xian didn't seem to want to talk about the name, but continued to speak in his mind. Let me ask you, if a warrior consumes spiritual power, how should he replenish it? Of course, it's by swallowing medicinal pills. Chu Fengmian replied. Any warrior needed to carry some medicinal pills with them. If they encountered spiritual power consumption, the best way to recover was to swallow and refine medicinal pills to recover. This was something that almost everyone knew. That's right. For ordinary warriors, swallowing and refining medicinal pills is indeed the best choice. But what if it's in battle? What if it's in danger? Xing Xian spoke again, and this time, without waiting for Chu Fengmian to answer, he directly said it. The best way to recover spiritual power. Of course, it's to communicate with the earth vein. Use the earth vein to replenish spiritual power. Communicate with the earth vein? A trace of surprise flashed in Chu Fengmian's eyes. Chu Fengmian naturally knew what the earth vein was. Under the 9 regions, there was a huge earth vein that contained endless spiritual power. Why did the spiritual herbs planted on the ground contain spiritual power? It was because they absorbed spiritual power from the earth vein. Chapter 42. Can a martial artist communicate with the ley line? Chu Fengmian could not help but ask. Heaven and earth were mysterious and there were no martial artists who could do this. Even his master, the Lord of the Sword Dao, hadn't been able to do something like this. In fact, he hadn't even imagined it. Ordinary martial artists can't, but it doesn't mean that you can't. Xing Xian heard Chu Fengmian's question and said sternly. Open your divine pulse now. Don't you feel that the spiritual energy in your body seems to be inexhaustible? This is actually a symbol of communicating with the ley line. Opening the spiritual pulse is to communicate with the ley line of the 9 regions. Only by opening all the spiritual pulses will it transform into a divine pulse. This way, you can communicate with the ley line of the 9 regions. From the ley line of the 9 regions. To seize the spiritual power. Xing Xian continued. Otherwise, why do you think the divine pulse has endless spiritual power? No matter how strong the spiritual power is, it will be exhausted sooner or later. However, if it is able to communicate with the ley line, it is equivalent to replenishing spiritual power at all times. This way, it is truly endless. I see. After hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian was enlightened. Indeed, he had doubts just now. No matter how many spiritual pulses Chu Fengmian opened, there was an upper limit. The spiritual power in it could not be endless. When using spiritual power, one could still feel the consumption. It was impossible that there was no consumption. It seemed that the spiritual power that Chu Fengmian had consumed should be connected to the earth vein by the divine vein to restore all the spiritual power that Chu Fengmian had consumed. You're lucky. Not only did you cultivate the cultivation method of the Huangxian sect, but you also obtained the Jianwang ancient elixir. That's why you can open the divine pulse. Xing Xian looked at Chu Fengmian and said with a sigh. Divine pulse is the cultivation method of the Huangxian sect? Xianhuang ancient elixir? Hearing Xing Xian's words, Chu Fengmian was puzzled. He had never heard of these unfamiliar words in his previous life. The cultivation method that I cultivate is obviously the broken bones rebirth technique. The cultivation method that you cultivate is actually the entry cultivation method of the Huangxian sect. The elixir just now was the Xianhuang ancient elixir. Xing Xian looked at Chu Fengmian and could not help but sigh. After so many years, the Huangxian sect has been forgotten. It seems that no one knows its past glory. Kid, since you have already cultivated the pulse, you don't have to cultivate the broken bones rebirth technique. This spell seems to be very suitable for your body. Xing Xian said. A line of words suddenly appeared in Chu Fengmian's mind. These words gradually condensed into the appearance of an ancient book. There were 3 big words written on it. At first glance, there was a feeling of boundless fighting spirit within them. As Chu Fengmian flipped through the pages, his eyes widened even more. The ancient war dragon was a heaven-defying divine beast. Back then, it was undoubtedly a supreme overlord. Many of the dragon tribes today were descendants of the ancient war dragon. Even though their bloodlines were not pure, they were still earth-shattering almighties. But in the dragon war technique, the ancient war dragon was treated as a combat unit. Just like the first level of the dragon war technique, when cultivated to the extreme, it was comparable to the strength of a real ancient war dragon. Then, there was the second level and the third level. However, the latter part of the content did not appear. With your current strength, the first level is enough for you to cultivate. Xing Xian looked at Chu Fengmian's disappointed face and said calmly. Being able to cultivate the first level of the dragon war technique is enough for you to establish yourself in this continent. Chu Fengmian nodded. Although the strength of an ancient war dragon was not enough to be ranked at the top of the 9 regions, it was invincible in Wuxing country. Even in the entire 9 regions, it was considered an expert. This was only the first level of the dragon war technique. The second and third levels would be even more terrifying. After cultivating the dragon war technique, I will definitely kill my way into the 7 major sects in the future. I will avenge my master. Chu Fengmian's eyes were filled with determination. The dragon war technique gave Chu Fengmian more hope. Let me see how to cultivate the dragon war technique. Chu Fengmian flipped through the dragon war technique in his mind and read it carefully. This battle dragon tactic can only be cultivated by martial artists with divine veins. Chu Fengmian was shocked when he saw the first rule. The first rule to cultivate the dragon war technique was that one must be a martial artist with divine pulse to cultivate it. It was no wonder that such a shocking cultivation technique was unknown in the 9 regions. Martial artists with divine pulse were legendary figures. At least Chu Fengmian did not know that there was another martial artist with divine pulse. This was a cultivation technique that could not be cultivated. Just the first rule alone was enough to make everyone retreat. You want to possess the strength of an ancient war dragon with a human body. Not divine pulse. How can you do it if you can't communicate with the earth vein? Xing Xian said coldly from the side. A human's body was much weaker than an ancient war dragon's body. Only the holy pulse could absorb spiritual energy from the earth vein endlessly to cultivate the war dragon skill. Otherwise, if it were an ordinary martial artist, even if he had opened 48 spiritual veins, he would have been sucked dry in an instant. The first step of the dragon war technique is to condense dragon blood. I'm afraid that I can only condense 1 drop of dragon blood at my full strength. Chu Fengmian said as he flipped through the dragon war technique. Even if Chu Fengmian had opened his divine pulse, his strength was still too weak. He had not advanced to level 8 bone tempering realm because he had opened his divine pulse. The spiritual energy that he had used to advance his cultivation had almost been sucked dry by his divine pulse. That was why he had managed to open his divine pulse. Chu Fengmian sat on the ground and closed his eyes. He meditated and activated the dragon war technique. The shadow of an ancient war dragon slowly appeared in Chu Fengmian's body. There were a total of 129,600 tiny particles on the war dragon's body. Each particle was equivalent to a drop of dragon blood. This number represented the number of yuan. When all 129,600 drops of dragon blood were condensed, it was equivalent to awakening a war dragon in Chu Fengmian's body. Condense. There was a loud boom. A dragon's roar was heard from Chu Fengmian's body, causing the surroundings to become extremely quiet. A drop of blood in Chu Fengmian's body quietly changed into a golden color. Chapter 43. This drop of battle dragon blood essence is enough for me to step into the body refining realm? Chu Fengmian opened his eyes. Only then did he realize that he had stepped into the body refinement realm. This was only the result of condensing the first drop of battle dragon water. The description of this war dragon skill is indeed true. A drop of war dragon essence blood is sufficient for me to step into the body refinement stage. If all 129,600 drops of dragon blood are gathered in the future, my strength will likely be comparable to an ancient war dragon. Chu Fengmian exclaimed in his heart. The profundity of this technique surpassed any technique that Chu Fengmian knew of. The techniques of the 7 great sects and the techniques of the hidden sacred grounds were not worth mentioning in front of this battle dragon technique. Oh right, Xianxing, how long have I been in this cave dwelling? Chu Fengmian suddenly asked Xianxing beside him. He had been cultivating since he came to this cave dwelling. First, he condensed the divine veins, then he condensed the dragon blood. He did not know how long it had been. About 2 months. What's wrong? Xianxing replied. More than 2 months. In addition to the time I spent cultivating in the barbaric mountain range, I'm afraid it's almost 3 months. Chu Fengmian calculated in his heart. He had spent more than 10 days cultivating in the barbaric mountains. In addition, he had spent more than 2 months in the cave. He was afraid that there was not much time left before the 3-month agreement that Chu Fengmian had made with the 5th elder. Chu Fengmian had always been a man of his word. He had to return for this battle. Xianxing, are you going to be kept in the storage pouch? Chu Fengmian looked at Xianxing, not knowing what to do. Now that he knew that this Xianxing was the weapon spirit of the bloodlust demon sword, he felt a little strange when he kept it in his storage pouch. However, Chu Fengmian didn't dare to carry the bloodlust demon sword with him. After all, if it was exposed, countless experts would come to snatch it. The bloodlust demon sword's mystical properties were known by everyone in the 9 regions. You want to keep my body in a small storage pouch? After hearing Chu Fengmian's words, Xianxing snorted and said arrogantly. I will possess your body. Don't worry. What? Before Chu Fengmian could open his mouth again, the 2-meter-long bloodlust demon sword suddenly turned into a purple light and flew into Chu Fengmian's right hand. It transformed into a strange purple pattern on Chu Fengmian's right hand. This Xian Xing's methods are indeed mysterious. Chu Fengmian couldn't help but sigh. However, this was also good. Chu Fengmian didn't have to worry about being exposed. Then, Chu Fengmian's mind flickered, and 7 spiritual veins appeared on his arm. After condensing the divine veins, Chu Fengmian's spiritual veins dimmed. However, Chu Fengmian could easily light them up. Unlocking the divine pulse was Chu Fengmian's biggest secret. He couldn't let anyone else know about it. Otherwise, Chu Fengmian believed that the 7 sects would use even more ruthless means to deal with Chu Fengmian than they did to the master of Sword Dao in his previous life. After all, the divine pulse was something that everyone wanted to obtain. Even some almighty warriors and ancestors would want to obtain it. Revealing 7 spiritual veins could prove that Chu Fengmian's strength had improved by leaps and bounds. Secondly, it wasn't too much. After all, there were also warriors with 7 spiritual veins in the Lin Mansion. Before Chu Fengmian left, he turned around and looked at the skeleton of the Green Yuan. He walked over and used his strength to lift the surrounding soil, turning it into a huge pit. Chu Fengmian placed the skeleton of the Green Yuan into the pit and buried it. The Green Yuan was an old friend of Chu Fengmian's in his previous life. Since he was dead, Chu Fengmian naturally had to bury him. After doing all this, Chu Fengmian no longer had any lingering feelings in the cave. "Let's go," Chu Fengmian said and walked out of the cave. The pool was still as cold as before. However, Chu Fengmian was different this time. Boom! A loud sound rang out in the pool. As the sound rang out, a figure suddenly jumped out from the pool and landed at the edge of the pool. Surprisingly, his body wasn't wet at all. Beside Chu Fengmian, there was a thin layer of spiritual energy, like a layer of armor. This was the ability of the body refinement realm, spiritual energy armor. Using spiritual energy to condense armor, one's strength was countless times stronger than a bone-tempering realm warrior. Because of this, even though the 5th elder was old, he still hadn't stepped into the body refinement realm. It was impossible for him to win. However, this time, Chu Fengmian had already stepped into the body refinement realm. In Chu Fengmian's eyes, the 5th elder was like an ant. Phantom. Chu Fengmian's figure rushed out of the barbaric mountain range. He used all his strength to activate his movement technique. With the support of the divine pulse, he didn't lose any spiritual energy. The divine pulse easily recovered the spiritual energy that he had lost. Good. If this continues, 2 days will be enough to rush back to the Lin Mansion. Chu Fengmian thought in his heart as he increased his speed. 2 days later. In front of the Martial Forest City's city gate, a figure suddenly jumped out. This figure was so fast that almost no one could clearly see the appearance of this figure or who it was. This person was Chu Fengmian. Lin Mansion. Today, the Lin Mansion was exceptionally lively. Almost all of the Lin Mansion's disciples had rushed back and were now gathered in the stands near the life and death ring. They were chatting with each other, and it was extremely lively. Today was the day that Chu Fengmian and the 5th elder had agreed to fight in the life and death ring 3 months later. This battle had attracted the attention of almost all of the Lin Mansion's disciples. For example, Lin Mo, Lin Yi, and the others who had been taught a lesson by Chu Fengmian had also come to the edge of the life and death ring. They were waiting. This time, let's see what that little bastard can do. He managed to stall for time last time. This time, it will definitely be the death of that little bastard. Lin Mo and Lin Yi were talking coldly. Previously, Chu Fengmian had made a bet with the 5th elder to resolve the crisis. However, everyone knew that today was the day when the real battle would break out. In this battle, unless Chu Fengmian stepped into the body refinement realm, he would definitely die if he faced the 5th elder. To step into the body refinement realm from the bone-tempering realm in 3 months, even the number 1 genius of the Lin Mansion couldn't do it. How could Chu Fengmian do it? The fifth elder is here. Under everyone's gaze, the figure of an old man landed on the life and death ring. This old man had a head full of white hair. He appeared to be very old. However, the current fifth elder appeared to be a lot more spirited compared to 3 months ago. Chapter 44. The fifth elder no longer looked as dispirited as before. It was obvious that he had made ample preparations to deal with Chu Fengmian. Even if he didn't make any preparations, do you think Chu Fengmian can defeat the fifth elder? One of the Lin Mansion's disciples sneered. Who does Chu Fengmian think he is to reach the body refinement realm from the 5th level of the bone tempering realm in 3 months? Even the vice mansion master had to spend half a year to achieve this. Don't tell me that a little bastard like him has a higher aptitude than the vice mansion master. That's right. Chu Fengmian will definitely lose this battle. Another Lin Mansion's disciple chimed in. It's almost noon. Why hasn't Chu Fengmian appeared yet? He must have run away because he's too scared. It was none other than Lin Yi. He said with a vicious look on his face. If he really runs away, Chu Fengmian will be a sinner of the Lin Mansion. He'll be hunted down by everyone in the Lin Mansion. That's right. Even if we have to chase him to the ends of the earth, we must kill him. Lin Mo said viciously. Both of them had been beaten up badly by Chu Fengmian. Now, Chu Fengmian hated them to the core. Chu Fengmian, don't come. Although the third elder had a calm expression on his face, the sweat on his palms betrayed the nervousness in his heart. The third elder wished that Chu Fengmian didn't come. That way, Chu Fengmian might have a chance to survive. With his talent, he could still grow stronger in the future. If Chu Fengmian had come today, the third elder wouldn't have had much confidence in him. Chu Fengmian had gone from the 5th level of the bone tempering realm to the body tempering realm in 3 months. It had taken him, the third elder, several years to achieve this. 3 months was too short. Even the third elder wasn't confident in himself. Third elder, it seems like this bastard is going to run away. Running away is a crime punishable by death. If the Lin Mansion's disciples meet him in the future, the first thing they'll do is to kill him. The fat fourth elder, who was sitting at the side, sneered at the third elder. He didn't like the third elder to begin with, especially when it came to Chu Fengmian. He had always been against him. Now that Chu Fengmian had not appeared, the fourth elder's expression became even more complacent. As long as Chu Fengmian didn't appear today, then the matter of Chu Fengmian violating the family rules would be set in stone. Even if Chu Fengmian had the identity of the head housekeeper of the outer residence, it would be impossible for the third elder to protect Chu Fengmian. That's right. If Chu Fengmian still doesn't show up by noon, then we'll consider him to have escaped from this life and death battle. The second elder, who was also the enforcement elder of the Lin clan, said coldly. Yes, if Chu Fengmian doesn't show up by noon, even if he ran away without a fight and violated the family rules, the disciples of the Lin clan will definitely kill him if they see him in the future. Before the third elder could retort, the Lin family estate head spoke coldly. The moment he opened his mouth, he had practically eliminated all other possibilities. It was useless no matter what others said. Time passed minute by minute. The scorching sun was high in the sky, and it was close to noon. Since Chu Fengmian doesn't dare to come, then let's carry out the family law. Elder of law enforcement, you can announce it. The fifth elder, who was standing on the stage, said coldly. The law enforcement elder glanced at the surroundings and nodded. Good. Chu Fengmian ran away from the life and death battle. He has violated the family law and has committed a capital offense. All disciples of the Lin clan will definitely kill Chu Fengmian if they see him in the future. Elder of law enforcement, you're really impatient. It's not even noon yet, and you've already violated the family law? A mocking voice suddenly sounded. A voice suddenly jumped out from the surroundings and landed on the stage. This figure was none other than Chu Fengmian. Chu Fengmian? He actually dares to come? Almost everyone was taken aback when they saw Chu Fengmian's sudden appearance. They all thought that Chu Fengmian had already escaped. After all, he was facing the fifth elder, and death was the only way out for him. However, Chu Fengmian came today. At the last moment, he stood on the life and death ring. Little bastard, you're actually here. This old man thought you'd run away. The fifth elder looked at Chu Fengmian with murderous intent in his eyes. That's good. Today, this old man will personally kill you, you little bastard. I'll avenge Xing'er. Today, even if you kneel and beg for mercy, this old man won't forgive you. This old man is going to pull out your soul. Place it in front of Xing'er's tomb. Ignite it. Let Xing'er's soul in heaven be comforted. Chu Fengmian had killed Li Xing, the only grandson of the fifth elder, Li Fu. Now, he couldn't wait to tear Chu Fengmian into pieces. Cut the crap, Li Fu. If you're capable today, I'll stand here and let you kill me. What do you think? Chu Fengmian's lips curled into a mocking smile. However, if you're not capable, who knows who will die in the life and death ring today? Little bastard. Arrogant. You're just a piece of trash. Do you really think you're someone? Hearing Chu Fengmian's words, the fifth elder's face turned red and blue veins popped out. He didn't look like an old man over 50 years old at all. As an elder, this old man naturally won't take advantage of a junior like you. How about this old man let you have 3 moves first? After 3 moves, this old man will make his move. The fifth elder stood where he was and looked at Chu Fengmian with a sneer. A layer of golden barrier slowly emerged on his body. Spiritual energy armor. The fifth elder was now using the technique of a body-refining realm martial artist. This move was almost invincible against a bone-tempering realm martial artist. He's using his spiritual energy armor from the start. This fifth elder is too steady. The crowd below was surprised to see this scene. It seemed that the fifth elder was extremely cautious against Chu Fengmian. He had used his spiritual energy armor from the start to prevent any accidents from happening. Another Lin Mansion disciple spoke up. That's normal. This Chu Fengmian's body movement and swordsmanship are extremely strange. It's not wrong to be cautious. Li Fu, are you really going to let me make the first move? Chu Fengmian looked at the fifth elder and sneered. Don't regret it when the time comes. This old man is a man of his words. I've never regretted it. To let you have 3 moves first against a junior like you, this old man, before the fifth elder could finish his words, a crisp sound suddenly rang out. Slap. A resounding slap landed on the fifth elder's face. Chu Fengmian's figure seemed to be standing on the same spot without any changes. However, the left side of the fifth elder's face was slapped. A red handprint could be seen clearly. Chapter 45. What a fast movement technique. I didn't even see Chu Fengmian's move. Many of the Lin Mansion's disciples were shocked. They were all martial artists at Bone Tempering Realm level 7 or level 8, but they couldn't see Chu Fengmian's move clearly. All they saw was a flash of shadow. Then, the fifth elder's face was slapped, leaving a handprint. The handprint wouldn't disappear for at least half a month. Even if the fifth elder won this battle, he would have to bear this humiliation for half a month. What? Little bastard. By the time the fifth elder came to his senses, Chu Fengmian had already moved again. This time, Chu Fengmian's figure directly appeared in front of the fifth elder. This time, it's your right cheek. As soon as Chu Fengmian's voice fell, another crisp sound rang out. Slap. The same crisp sound rang out. Another blood-red handprint was imprinted on the fifth elder's right cheek. This time, the fifth elder was already prepared. However, Chu Fengmian's palm strike still left a palm imprint on the right side of his face. Chu Fengmian's speed was so fast that the fifth elder couldn't react in time. How can this little bastard be so fast? And how was he able to break through my spirit energy armor? The fifth elder thought to himself in shock. He could vaguely see Chu Fengmian's figure, but his body couldn't react in time. Chu Fengmian's speed was so fast that the fifth elder couldn't resist it even if he saw it. Chu Fengmian's strength was even more shocking. The spiritual energy armor on the fifth elder's body seemed to be nothing in front of Chu Fengmian, and it was easily broken. Li Fu, aren't you relying on the spiritual energy armor? However, the only thing you can rely on is meaningless in front of me. Chu Fengmian looked at the fifth elder with a mocking smile. Unfortunately, the spiritual energy armor is meaningless to me. A golden barrier suddenly appeared on Chu Fengmian's body. The spiritual energy armor condensed on Chu Fengmian's body. Body refining realm. Chu Fengmian has stepped into the body refining realm. Transforming spirit energy into armor was an ability that only body tempering realm martial artists possessed. If one hadn't stepped into the body tempering realm, even if one was at the peak of the bone tempering realm, no matter how strong a genius was, they still wouldn't be able to do it. Now that Chu Fengmian's spirit power armor had appeared, it meant that Chu Fengmian had really stepped into the body tempering realm from the 5th level of the bone tempering realm in 3 months. 3 months. 3 months' time. How is this possible? On one side of the stands, a young man looked at Chu Fengmian with eyes full of killing intent. This killing intent even surpassed that of the 5th elder. This person was the young mansion master of the Lin Mansion, Lin Chengyun, the #1 genius of the Lin Mansion. How could a trash like him possibly step into the body refinement realm in just 3 months when he had no spirit vein? Lin Chengyun had a crazed look on his face. He could not imagine how terrifying Chu Fengmian would become if he was allowed to continue growing at this rate. Shadow. With a low roar, a black-clothed man appeared beside Lin Chengyun without a sound. Find a chance for me. As soon as Chu Fengmian leaves the Lin Mansion, kill him for me. Yes. The black-clothed man replied and disappeared. None of this attracted anyone's attention. Good. 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 As expected of Senior Chu's grandson. To step into the body refinement realm from the 5th level of the bone tempering realm in 3 months, I'm afraid there aren't many people in the entire victorious Wu country who can do this. The 3rd elder shouted happily from the spectator stand. He originally thought that Chu Fengmian would die if he faced off against the 5th elder. However, Chu Fengmian had broken through to the body refinement realm, so the outcome was completely different. As a body refinement realm martial artist, even if there was a gap between their realms, Chu Fengmian's strength was not without a chance of winning. Hearing the discussions around him, the 5th elder's face turned ugly. In the beginning, he had said that he would teach Chu Fengmian a lesson and even let Chu Fengmian use 3 moves because he thought Chu Fengmian would not be able to break his spirit power armor. However, Chu Fengmian's 2 slaps had humiliated him in front of everyone. At this age, the 5th elder valued his reputation more than his life. So what if you've just stepped into the body refinement realm? There are also differences in the body refinement realm. I originally wanted to give you a chance to live, but since you don't want it, don't blame me for being ruthless. The 5th elder roared and a long spear suddenly appeared in his hand. As the long spear appeared in his hand, gusts of wind swept around the 5th elder. As the long spear danced, it was enough to activate the wind spirit energy. The long spear was made of fine steel and there was an inscription on the spearhead. It was a black great upper spiritual artifact. The vast wind spear. The Lin Mansion's defensive weapon. The vast wind spear. Why is the 5th elder with this spear? The 3rd elder looked at the long spear in the 5th elder's hand and his face changed. The vast wind spear had always been the Lin Mansion's treasure and only the Lin Mansion master could use it. However, it appeared in the 5th elder's hand today. Mansion master, what is going on? The Lin Mansion owes the 5th elder, Li Fu. Now that he wants to borrow it, I'll lend it to him. The Lin Mansion master said coldly. Mansion master, this is against the rules. Moreover, the vast wind spear is used in the life and death ring. The 3rd elder said hurriedly. The vast wind spear was a black great upper spiritual artifact. Once it was used, it could easily cross 2 realms to fight. The 5th elder, Li Fu's cultivation realm was already higher than Chu Fengmian's. In addition to the vast wind spear, he wanted to force Chu Fengmian into a desperate situation. Uncle Lin, you don't have to say anymore. I have heard of the reputation of the vast wind spear. I can give it a try today. Chu Fengmian said to the third elder, hinting him not to continue arguing. The vast wind spear appearing in the fifth elder's hand was enough to explain everything. In order to deal with Chu Fengmian, the Lin mansion even gave the fifth elder the mansion master's weapon. What else was there to explain? Chu Fengmian, where's your sword? Draw it out. The fifth elder held the vast wind spear and looked at Chu Fengmian. He frowned and said. Previously, Chu Fengmian defeated Li Xing by relying on a strange movement technique and exquisite swordsmanship. Now that Chu Fengmian had displayed his movement technique, Chu Fengmian had yet to draw his sword. I don't need to draw my sword to deal with you. Chu Fengmian looked at the fifth elder and said calmly, you're tuning into the Mythic Realms YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.